Let's get peppy! Welcome to PEP 244. That's Planet Extra Podcast. I'm CHAS, a host of Planet America on ABC Australia, and this is an official podcast of the ABC. So say hi to the Ombudsman for me. On PEP, we cover all the stuff that's too nerdy for TV. You missed that, Dave? If you're listening, you can find us on YouTube at the PEP with CHAS and Dr. Dave channel. You can find highlights there as well now. And we're on Facebook at the CHAS from Planet America channel. You also find timestamps and show notes in our blurb. And if you leave a comment under our current episode video, we are likely to see it. And in fact, I'll get into it with you like I did this week with a whole bunch of people. You can also tweet us or blue sky us at PEPCHASDRDAVE. That's at PepChas Dr. Dave. If you want to chat to some fellow peppers, you can join our Discord server. It's on the screen right now or in the blurb of the podcast. But if you want to contact me or Lockie the Lucky privately, why not email us? The address is producer@pepthepodcast.com. That address again is producer@pepthepodcast.com. And do not forget to subscribe for all that peppy goodness. It all helps. And a lot of you did this week. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. It makes me feel seen. We are recording this at 2:30 p.m. on Thursday afternoon, that is. So that is, what's that? That's, 10:30 p.m. on Wednesday.
Something like that.
In America, on the East Coast of America.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. But for now, let's turn to the man who refuses point blank, no matter how much I try, I'm always trying to get him to raise the stakes in controversial views. He just says, no, Chaz, no. I am talking, of course, about Dr. Pepper himself, Dr. David Smith. Welcome back to 2026, Dave.
It is great to be back in Studio Pep. I am Associate Professor David Smith. I'm an Associate Professor at the United States Studies Centre at the University of Sydney, but I do not speak on behalf of either of those institutions. When I'm on PEP, all you're hearing are my opinions, not anybody else's or not any kind of official statement.
I can verify that because all the officials at Sydney Uni came up to me only minutes ago to tell me their opinions, and they're completely different to what Dr. Dave was about to say. By the way, for those who are watching rather than listening, if you're wondering why I look like I just got out of the shower, it's because number one, my hair's getting long and so I put a little gel in there. But number two, most importantly, I just got out of the shower. I know you might wonder, why is he having showers at 2:30 p.m. in the afternoon? But it's just because I was preparing this podcast. And I put that above my personal hygiene, as would be apparent by now, I would have thought. But anyway, that's why you should listen to the podcast rather than watch it. Dr. Dave, what are you grateful for?
It's not illegal to take a shower at 2:30 in the afternoon.
No, it's not.
Stop your judgment, everyone.
Yes. Thanks for defending me, Dave, against that armada of fictional critics. What are you grateful for on this fine February 12th?
Over the summer, I was doing a bit of reading, and I'll be talking a lot about some of the reading that I was doing. But my personal book recommendation is two books by Connie Willis. So Connie Willis is an American science fiction author who has won just about every accolade that it is possible to win in science fiction, although the books that I was reading are very Anglophilic. They're all set in Oxford. So she writes about time travel. Now, most science fiction about time travel is based on time travel paradoxes. What happens when you go back in time and change things, murder your own grandfather or whatever. Connie Willis has got no time for time travel paradoxes. The premise of her book is, yes, time travel has been achieved by academic historians at Oxford University. So in 2058, being a historian means being sent back in time to look at stuff. But time has ways of protecting itself from being tampered with. And this is known as the slippage in her novels, which means that if you're trying to change something, time will actually not let you go back to the point where it changes. What is remarkable about these novels is that they are extremely human and extremely moving, which is not something that you always get in science fiction. So the two that I read were Doomsday book, which is set during the plague. So
Doomsday book, rather.
Well, no, she called it the Doomsday book, right. Yes, which is a bleak but incredibly moving book. I will warn you in advance that this book was written in 1992, and even though it's set in 2058 and they've mastered time travel, they haven't mastered mobile phones. So a lot of the plot of the book is actually about people in 2058 missing landline calls. Oh, wow. But if you could just put your disbelief on hold in a time travel novel, you will find it very emotionally rewarding. The sequel to this book was very, very different. It's a Victorian comedic romp called To Say Nothing of the Dog, which is the subtitle of a famous Victorian comic novel called Three Men and a Dog. And the whole thing is basically just a wild goose chase of historians trying to figure out what exactly went wrong in time that they're not allowed to mess with. It turns out to be something you never would have expected, but also very good. And despite the fact that it's very funny, also very moving. These novels are 500 to 600 pages long each. So if you like just really getting into something that's going to be with you for a long time, highly recommend these novels by Connie Willis. There are 2 other books in the series, but I haven't read them yet.
Are they going on the list?
These ones definitely are going on the list. Doomsday book and To Say Nothing of the Dog.
So when was Doomsday book written again?
1992. To Say Nothing of the Dog was written in 1998.
And in 1992, she didn't foretell mobile phones.
Well, I doubt that
that already existed.
Yeah. I think it was probably more. I mean, in many ways, 2058 does not look very different from 1992, apart from the fact that they've got time travel. Like all the technology and everything looks the same. It's more just she didn't want to involve technologies that wouldn't advance the plot in the way that, whereas landlines, she even talks about trunk line calls, actually advance the plot.
I'm grateful for someone writing a book set at all in the future.
Yeah.
Where they don't try and just speculate wildly about just mythical inventions.
Yes.
And they just go, it's kind of like now.
Yeah.
Because really, when you think 50 years back, like technology doesn't move that fast. Like what we think of it as moving fast because we go, oh, wow, look at the iPhone and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Sure. Absolutely. But to a caveman, looking at technology in 1960 and looking at technology now, they wouldn't think it was all that different.
No.
They'd be still getting over the fact we live in houses.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The fact that we've got the air fryer now.
Yes.
Not going to impress caveman very much.
So I'll pay that. Well, I'm grateful for, Dave. It's similar to you, except for a different sense. Rather than sight, it's hearing.
Right.
I'm grateful for the music industry. I did a lot of listening to music during my holidays.
Okay.
It looks like you've been.
I have just lost sound in my ears.
Ironically.
Just as you were saying that.
So now you're going to be grateful when you get your sound back. While Lockie's doing that, I'll just keep on going.
Okay.
Look, I love my music. You guys know that. You're grateful for sound now, aren't you?
Yes.
I have music on basically all the time. If I'm reading, I'm playing music.
Yep.
When I'm walking, I'm playing music. And I just told you about 20 hours of my day just then, reading and walking. I'm a big sort of pop guy, I must admit. Anything poppy from the last 80 years or so, I'm usually into.
Right.
But I must admit, from 2018 onwards, there are increasing numbers of songs that were doing the rounds that I found a little bit boring.
Okay.
It's not like there weren't songs I loved every year.
Yep.
But I went from maybe liking 30% of the songs I heard to liking 10% of the songs I heard.
Right.
It was like that. It was just sort of trailing off. And look, I was feeling a bit down about that. Because number one, because I love music so much and I didn't want to cut myself off to future music. And secondly, I was just thinking, well, music can't be the problem. I'm the problem. The problem is I'm getting old. That's the problem. It happens to everyone eventually.
Yeah.
I was hoping it would happen to me a bit later, but it was happening. But then from 2022, things started to pick up a bit for me.
Okay.
And it kept on picking up. And I've got to say, 2025 for me is a banner year for music.
Okay.
I loved music more last year than probably every year since 2013.
Yeah.
I just loved so many songs. My 2025 highlights playlist, I make a little highlights playlist for myself. It's 400 songs long. That's the highlights playlist.
Wow.
So I spent my whole holidays just going off loving my music, and I'm immensely grateful for that. Now, here's a problem. I've just told you about music.
Yeah.
You want to hear something, you want me to give you some names. Obviously, it's the first thing people go, oh, give us an example. If I played you some music, we're going to get copyright struck.
Yep, sorry.
So I'm not an idiot.
Not if you sing them.
Lucky, do you really want to open that box? And, I could give you a list of like 100 songs and bore you to bits. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and I'll cut down the middle. I will give you a very brief speed read list, like the top of the pod, of 30 of my favourite songs from 2025.
Okay.
There's not the top 30, but just I thought a representative sample of 30 songs from my highlights
Right.
list. Okay, so here we go. Vodka Cranberry by Conan Gray, 12 to 12, Somber, Lover Girl, Leifei, Blink, Corbin Besson, Victory Lap, Fred Again and Skepta, Lose My Mind, Don Toliver and Toja Cat, Ojos Tristes by Selena Gomez and Benny Blanco, The Subway, Chapel Roan, Ego Death of the Bachelorette Party, Hayley Williams, Life Signs, Water From Your Eyes, Couldn't Wait For You by Jordan Parker, So Easy to Fall in Love by Olivia Dean, Loser by Sophie and the Giants, Sally When the Wine Runs Out by Role Model, Talk to Me by Damiano, David and Tyler, Fuck You For Now by Jade, Opalite by Taylor Swift, Red Lights by Betty Reyes, Count the Ways by The Last Dinner Party, In Another Life by G Flip, La Perla by Rosalia, Times Like These by Addison Rae, Too Pretty for Buffalo by Baby Nova, Twilight Zone by Ariana Grande, Dracula by Tame Impala, Daisies by Justin Bieber, Six de Febrero by Aitana, Car by Royal Lotus, Worth My Time by Tyne James Organ, and Dinah's Hill by Santa Spiro. I am so grateful to all of those songs and about 370 more. Thank you for keeping me company in the hours I stay up. And in my book, music is magical. So thank you very much.
I'm just interested in your earlier statement about your love of pop music going back 80 years. Does it go back 100 years?
I don't know much music from the
Does
20s.
it go back to Yes, We Have No Bananas?
It doesn't go back to Yes, We Have No Bananas.
I'm glad.
No, I kind of start when the big bands are starting to move to rock and roll, around that kind of period.
Right, okay,
That sort of
yes.
transition period. That's where I can sort of jump in with bananas.
The Subway should have been higher.
It wasn't in order, mate.
Should have been higher.
We already have talked about this. The Subway was pretty much my favourite song last year. Yeah, it's a great song. And scandalously unloved compared to Chapel Roan's other stuff. I think it's easily her best song. But anyway, let's not do that.
Okay.
Correspondence. Oh, God. There was a bit. I mean, look, a lot of it was very positive. And,
Yes.
thank you very much. I really appreciate it. But also, I made a few mistakes.
Okay.
I've got to say, I was pretty rusty. It was 1 a.m. And there was one mistake I made where I literally just misread what was in my notes. And I just said something wrong. So let's start with the shootings. Because we did a bit on that.
Yep.
Uncle Phil Richard, a lot of people noted that the first shot delivered at Renee Good was through her windscreen, not her side window, as I suggested. The other shots were through the side window. If you have a look, right now I'm showing you the first shot there is through the windscreen. Yes, the side of the windscreen, as Richard pointed out, the analysis has shown that the shooter was still next to the car at the time, not in front of the car, and the jolt was because his feet slipped. Either way, he was in no danger, and it seems like the killing shot was in the side window, he says. Either way, I was wrong. So I just wanted to correct that. Uncle Phil also made the point that I shouldn't distinguish between the first shot and the 10th shot, because I kept on saying things like, that first shot you could almost understand that someone might be scared. By the 10th shot, they would not be scared. That's just ridiculous. He said you shouldn't distinguish between them because of how police officers are trained. They're taught to take multiple shots. People just don't get that when a police officer decides to fire, the officer has taken a decision to kill. They are trained to go for the center of visible mass, the torso for an exposed person, but for someone seated in a car, that will be their head. They're not snipers. They're going to miss with most of their shots, so they are taught to take multiple shots. It becomes instinctive. That's a fair point. I did consider mentioning that last week, but I thought I'd cut them enough slack as it was. So I thought I won't give them that. But you are right. So I just thought I'd note that. And then here's the correspondence following up, showing that everyone thought that I cut them too much slack. So the Egotastical says, Chaz, you're too insistent that the Renee and Alex shooters made mistakes under trying circumstances. They didn't accidentally misfire their guns, and if they go to court, they'll argue they were justified in killing those two, not that they made a mistake. As you say, both shooters were experienced officers, so lack of training isn't an excuse. Having whistles and car horns sounding off in no way should make any reasonable person more likely to shoot someone. I was really annoyed, so I shot them. Doesn't make the shooting a mistake. By the way, Dave, I didn't argue any of those things. Egotisticals, just saying, I did use the word mistake a lot. Not about the shootings. I used a mistake about what led up to the shootings.
Right.
Because they made many mistakes on the way to the shootings.
Yes.
That made the shootings more likely, especially the Pretty one, where you go, okay, you did about 6 different things wrong to set up this situation where you felt panicked.
Yes.
And if you'd done anything right, you wouldn't be panicked right now.
Yes.
That was what I was saying. I'm not saying it's just you're verbally me egotistical. You wrote a comment which I understood, but Dave didn't listen to the podcast, of course, because he never does. So I just want to explain it to him. Okay.
Thank you.
It's okay, Dave. It's all right. We have full knowledge and love. Kaza Waza Daza says, "Oh, Chaz, the Alex Preddy argument you made sounds like an excuse that the ICE can use to justify any shooting. We thought he had a gun. Someone said he had a gun." To be clear, Kaza Waza Daza, I don't think that's a legitimate excuse. I was conflating legal questions with my personal views. Right? I often don't even tell you guys my personal views because I'm not sure they're relevant. I just try and tell you like legal issues and stuff because they are relevant, right? Yeah. I mean, I did tell you what I thought. The good shooting was worse than the Pretty shooting. I mean, I thought they were both bad, but I thought the good shooting was absolutely just, they got no ground to stand on at all in any way, shape or form. But I also think both shootings in my world would be at least negligent homicide, at least, and likely flat out murder, both of them. So that's actually my actual view. I didn't want to write a little verbal tweet for you last week, but that's what I actually think. And on the whistles and horns, ZG says, the whistles and horns are not just used to annoy ICE, they're ostensibly used to alert nearby residents and citizens of nearby ICE operations. Given the prevalence last year of masked goons jumping out of vans and snatching underwear peel off the street, this seems totally reasonable, not just legal to me. And Vegetarian adds, there are certain whistle codes to warn of ICE presence. 3 short blasts, or 2 to inform of an act of kidnapping, which is 3 long blasts. This now becomes symbolic of community support for each other and resistance against ICE. Okay, I didn't know about the code, so that's interesting. Thought I'd share that. Greenland. John noted, this is the one which I just misread my notes. I said they paid $5 trillion in taxes. I don't know why I said that. When written in front of me was $5 billion in taxes. I'm talking the US territories here. The combined US territories pay $5 billion in taxes per year, not $5 trillion in taxes. So let's just make that very clear. Thank you for noticing, John. Nick has another quick correction. Part of the deal with the block till skud, which is what they call the yearly payment from Denmark to Greenland, is that while Greenland retains the income from mining rights, for every $2 in revenue they receive over $25 million, the block till skud reduces by $1. Remember, it's like 700 million or something they get. Yep. That's the starting point. Furthermore, if it drops to 0 due to mining income, there is a trigger for further negotiations over the future of the block till skud. So they do control mining, yes, but it's a slightly more complex calculation. Thank you for that clarification, Nick. Dan says that this time it was Jared's mistake. Well, it's not really a mistake. This is just an arguable thing.
Okay.
Jared said that Denmark lost more soldiers as a per capita percentage than any other European country. And Dan correctly notes that a lot of people think of Georgia as a European country. And
right.
Georgia lost more.
Right.
Georgia lost 8.42 deaths per million. Denmark was 8.0 deaths per million,
right.
At least according to Wikipedia.
Yep.
And he said, yeah, but compare that to the US with 7.96, less than both of them. And the UK, 7.25, Estonia, 6.92. Australia was 1.86, and New Zealand, 2.27. So there you go. And on the Danish deaths, Scandia says Armadillo is one of my favourite documentaries. It's about the Danes' role in Afghanistan. Very dark and eye-opening about the sacrifice of NATO nations, which is interesting. And then we got a whole bunch of people who, this is my fault, entirely my fault, who got very bogged down on how France versus Russia would play out in a game of Risk or some kind of Stratego kind of game. Because I was criticizing, Dave, just to explain quickly, I was criticizing Trump's logic of saying, well, we need to look after Greenland, need to control Greenland because Denmark can't save Greenland against China and Russia. And I said, you can just throw any 2 countries in there and the same logic will apply because China and Russia would beat almost anyone. And I just said, France can't defend itself against Russia. I said, just picking 2 random countries. Yes. That was a mistake.
Yeah.
because a lot of people went into quite a lot of depth about why France absolutely could defend itself against Russia. I accept all those arguments.
Yes.
I don't want to spend 10 minutes talking about it.
No. I'll just add one thing.
Yes,
and
please.
this is about music.
Please.
Everyone complains about the decline of the Triple J Hottest 100.
Yeah.
God, you should have heard it in some of its early years. There was one year, I think it was 1993, when a novelty song called Asshole by Dennis Leary
I remember that.
Just while you were talking about France can't defend itself, I just remember one of the lines from that song. 2 words, nuclear fucking weapons.
By the way.
Anyway, that's the sort of thing that used to top the Hottest 100.
Yes.
Do you want those days back, children? No.
Well, I mean, Keith was like number 4. That's a novelty song as well. So they've still got novelty songs. Although, just like the rest of the music industry, the Hottest 100 this year, man, I was into about 80 of those songs. It's a lot.
That's why the purists think it's gone into decline.
Probably. Yeah.
They're like, this is just a CHAS list.
It probably shouldn't appeal to me, yeah. I mean, look, I love the 993 list as well, so maybe it's always been shit.
Yeah.
My point is, just to clarify, not that France is particularly weak or that Russia is about to invade France or can. I understand there's a lot of countries in France and Russia. I get it. I understand. I'm just saying, throw any two, talk about China and Taiwan, talk about China and the Philippines, talk about Russia and Moldova, talk about any number of countries. Like, the fact is, America could say about any number of those countries, well, we should own them because they can't defend themselves against Russia and China as well as we can. It's a bullshit argument.
It is.
That's my point.
I would say, though, that the most salient point
Yeah.
is that there's only one country in living memory that has militarily threatened Greenland, and that is the United States of America.
That is true. That is also an excellent point.
Yes.
And by the way, I completely own that. I'm not criticizing anyone who jumped on me about France and Russia.
Okay.
I opened that door. I was sloppy. I was not my best. so I just want to clarify my
I
point.
just want to say, though, on a broader point, hasn't one of the lessons of the second half of the 20th century into the first 2 decades of the 21st century, hasn't it been, it's actually very hard to invade and conquer anywhere?
Yeah.
And big, very powerful countries that try to do it keep finding themselves in losing wars, which they never thought that they were going to lose. It's actually a lot harder than they always think it's going to be.
That's fair. But I also, I'm not disputing that Greenland would be hard to defend for Denmark.
Yes.
It would be hard to defend.
Yes.
It's still a bullshit argument. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. No, I
Because
get
of
it.
NATO. Because NATO's there. Like we talked about last week. Yes.
Okay, yeah.
All right. Okay. Anyway. Tim Walz, Susan says, I think another element of Walz not running again is the way his son has been harassed and trolled online. Not a deciding factor, maybe, but it would have confirmed to him that he'd made the right decision. That's a fair point. Okay. And I feel sorry for his son. That is awful what's going on there. Ukraine, Sean says, Chaz, you made a mistake on your stats. I've made so many mistakes. The 325,000 Russians and 140,000 Ukrainians refers to fatalities.
Yes.
Not just casualties.
Yes.
The vast majority of the remaining 1.8 million casualties are military wounded and injured. I said they were civilians. They're not. They're military wounded and injured. Okay, so that was another mistake. And my final bit of correspondence from Mandy. About my pet peeve, Chaz, may I politely suggest that crime may not be your biggest peeve for 2026. I said MAGA people reclaiming the idea of crime rates dropping was clearly about to annoy me a lot because they've been dropping for years. I've been talking about it for years.
Yeah.
They keep on saying, the stats are rubbish, they're phony, ignoring it.
Yes.
And then as soon as they're in charge, they go, oh, look at that. That's proof that everything we're doing is working. She said, I would wager the lack of government statistics and quality of reporting information for data not collected will be your pet peeve. I also suspect the misuse of data in 2026 may be a close second. Remember Elon and his Doge colleagues at the start of 2025. I suspect that government data that was captured during this period will become a talking point of 2026. And we're just possibly seeing the beginning of this usage. You know me well, Mandy. That will bother me. I'm getting angry just thinking about that. But you wrote that just after our pod came out. And I read that and thought, yeah, she's right. But then literally right after I read that, I saw this clip.
A study from the Council on Criminal Justice shows that the murder rate across America's largest cities plummeted in 2025 to its lowest level since at least 1900. This dramatic decline is what happens when a president secures the border, fully mobilizes federal law enforcement to arrest violent criminals, and aggressively deports the worst of the worst illegal aliens from our country.
And my blood pressure started to rise! Arrgh! Oh my God, so annoying. Anyway, Dave, let's get into the main content.
Okay.
Every single year we do this. You talk about Super Bowl while I have a snack.
Okay.
Why don't
Yes.
you tell us about the Super Bowl again?
Let's talk about the Super Bowl. Just before I do that, for those of you who remember our Olympic mascots impromptu special a couple of years ago, this year's Olympic mascots I think are very good.
Yeah.
They're two stoats.
Stoats?
Yes.
Okay.
Named Milo after Milan and Tina after Cortina.
Sure, why not?
Yeah. The stoat is, not an animal that has had a great cultural moment to this point.
No.
Whereas you can talk about badgering someone unpleasantly, or
Yes.
you can call someone a weasel if you don't like them very much.
Yeah.
There's no, you filthy stoat. But yeah, these are putting stoats
Look
on
at
that.
that.
And
Look at
as
that.
far as Olympic mascots go, I think this is the right kind. I like animal Olympic mascots.
Sure.
Yes. So kudos to whoever came up with Milo and Tina.
And we've got little fairies with them as well. What's that all about?
They look like ChatGPT might have generated them.
Maybe. Okay. Did the Stoats, do they appear in the Super Bowl? Or
No, they don't. No, I
okay.
just wanted to say that just in case anybody was wondering my opinion on this year's Olympic mascot.
Because I would have watched the Super Bowl if I knew there were Stoats playing. Anyway, go on.
And by the way, I'm going to preface everything by saying I am very rusty on this. So I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of correspondence next week about various mistakes and slips that I have made. Let's not beat around the bush. This Super Bowl was not exciting or entertaining in any way.
I believe you.
Now, lest anyone remember my very similar assessment of last year's Super Bowl and think, well, Dr. Dave is just a Super Bowl grump. No, there have actually been a lot of great and very exciting Super Bowls played. Actually, since the last time that New England and Seattle were in a Super Bowl in 2015, that game was a classic. There have been a lot of classics played since then. New England versus the Falcons in 2017, a great comeback. All of the Super Bowls that the Kansas City Chiefs won were great comebacks. The Bengals and the Rams played right down to the wire a few years ago. But this one was just not good to watch. That's not to say that it wasn't a good game. Seattle's defense put in one of the great all-time Super Bowl performances, as did their kickers, the Australian punter Michael Dixon and their place kicker Jason Myers, who now holds the record for field goals in a Super Bowl. And also New England's defense played really well for most of the game. Seattle only got one touchdown and they were forced to play very, very conservatively. But the thing about the American form of football is watching two defenses playing so well that they basically stop the offense from doing anything does not make for great television. No. Even if you're a real fan of defense, which I am, after a while, you want to see someone do something. Now,
something.
Even though both defenses were very good, New England's offense was just good enough to keep getting into field goal range. So that's why they ended up with 5 field goals, a Super Bowl record, 2 touchdowns, only one of which came off the offense, and the other one came from an interception. New England, on the other hand, their offense was just completely knocked on its ass, especially their offensive line. There was one moment where one of the Seattle defensive front four, who just dominated the game, literally used a New England lineman like a bowling ball to knock over the quarterback. That was one of the very few things that could pass as a highlight in this game.
Sounds like a Bugs Bunny cartoon.
Yeah, so poor old Drake May, who's a very young second-year quarterback, had a great year. This was really a baptism of fire for him. He got sacked 7 times. New England, on their first possession of the game, actually did manage to cross the 50-yard line, but then they had to punt. They didn't get back over the 50-yard line until the fourth quarter. Mm-hmm. So it was really just Seattle strangling the life out of the game while they kept kicking field goals. You might remember that last year I said when you watch a game like this where, the result is beyond all doubt pretty early on, you start looking for records, and it's really disappointing then when the records don't eventuate. So this time around, heading towards the fourth quarter, it was like, wow, this might be the first time a team's ever won the Super Bowl without even bothering to score a touchdown. But then they scored a touchdown. So that was gone. But then there was still the possibility this would be the first shutout in Super Bowl history. But then Drake May rather annoyingly found that he could throw downfield, and they scored a touchdown. And then there was one of the most annoying things in sport, and you would know this as an AFL fan because this seems to happen a lot in AFL games. The game where it looks like a team is cruising to victory at the beginning of the fourth quarter, but then something happens that just gives you this faintest whiff of hope, which then gets extinguished in the most disappointing way imaginable. That was what happened in this game. So
that does happen.
The Patriots got it to 19-7. Which is, it's not inconceivable that they could win from that point, although Mike Vrabel's decision to take the extra point rather than a 2-point conversion made it very hard. But, it was then Drake May started driving downfield again. But then he threw what I've seen described as the worst pass in Super Bowl history, and it was intercepted, and that was basically what killed the comeback in its infancy.
I tell you what sport delivers a lot of that kind of thing, like you described, where just you think someone's done, and it's a little bit of hope, and then they're done.
Yes.
2020 does. And the reason for that is because a smashing in 2020 is 40 runs.
Yep.
40 runs is 2 overs if someone bats well.
Yeah.
And you just need... You can have a number 10 batsman do it.
Yeah.
Like, you just need someone just to connect with 5 or 6 sixes, and any slogger can do that on their day.
Yes.
And you win.
Yep.
And so often with 2020, a team will be 5 wickets down or 6 wickets down early, and you go, well, this is over.
Yeah.
And they'll crawl their way to being within 45 runs with 2 overs to go or 3 overs to go, and you go, shit, actually, mathematically, I've seen this happen like heaps of times before. They could actually do this. Yeah. And then they lose by 44 runs.
Yeah.
And
it's the most annoying thing. You just prefer a clean beatdown, really, rather than the offer of false hope. So anyway, this will go down as one of the most boring Super Bowls in history, which is to take nothing away from the Seahawks, who I think are an historically great team. The last time the Seahawks won, I was living in Seattle, and also the rest of the country just found the game boring and annoying because the Seahawks massively beat down the Broncos that year.
Were you outraged by Bad Bunny?
I was not outraged by Bad Bunny. Now, I actually made a point of watching it this year because usually I don't bother, but I knew that this was going to be controversial. I don't speak Spanish, so I couldn't understand what was going on, although it was so well staged and well choreographed that you got the basic idea of the story. But I didn't know that marriage that was happening was real, which apparently it is. What I picked up on the first viewing, though, was when Bad Bunny says, "God bless America," and then did this roll call of every country in the Western Hemisphere.
In literally America.
Yes. Yeah, I thought that is great, and that is definitely going to piss some people off.
Yes.
So it was only later when I read about what happened in the halftime show, because the first reports by people who also don't speak Spanish were, this wasn't very political at all. Yeah, but actually reading about some of the things that happened in the halftime show, like Ricky Martin singing the song "What Happened to Hawaii," which is using Hawaii as a lesson for why you actually don't want statehood, why you want independence instead. That's pretty political. Lady Gaga singing in a dress that was the color of blue of the original Puerto Rican independence flag that was banned by the United States in 1947. That is that's pretty political. I actually did get the stuff about the power lines because, power is out. There's been, still after Hurricane Maria, large parts of the island constantly struggle with power. I did get that bit. There was disagreement in the things I read about the Ocasio 64 jersey he was wearing. So Ocasio is his father's name, I think.
Ocasio is his last name. That's his surname.
Okay.
Isn't it? I think
is it? Is
his name Benito Ocasio? I think so. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So there was one report that said 64 is the number of people who died in Hurricane Maria.
Yes, that's why I read.
But another one said no, 64 was the year his father was born.
I think it's about Hurricane Maria more than
the
year his father was born.
Yeah. Yeah, so no, I was not outraged by this at all.
Well, I wonder if how your view compared to Laura Loomer's view.
Oh, yes, this is not white enough for me.
It's often very similar, your views and Laura Loomer's views.
Yeah.
I'll read it out. Illegal aliens and Latin hookers twerking at the Super Bowl. Not a single white person or English translation at the Super Bowl. This isn't white enough for me. Can't even watch a Super Bowl anymore because immigrants have literally ruined everything. She's not subtle, is she?
No. No, kudos for her for just saying it.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah.
Surely, aren't we? I mean, sorry, I should have prepared this a little bit better, but haven't we all accepted by now that Latinos are white? Like, not a single white person? What are you talking about? Like, if Bad Bunny spoke with an American accent in pure English and said, "Go MAGA," no one would, like, Laura Loomer wouldn't think that he wasn't white. Laura Loomer would think, yeah, he's white. Like, it's just, I don't know. It's just like, I feel like, I find it very strange when you're looking at white people on screen, almost exclusively white people on screen. And I read Laura Loomer saying, not a single white person.
Yeah, well. No, I mean, what she is referring to is the fact that in the United States, there was a long history of whiteness being a very racially exclusive thing.
Yeah.
There was a time in the United States, like in Australia, where even Greeks and Italians and Yugoslavs were not considered white or Irish, if we go back even further. And she is basically saying, no, Latinos, you're excluded from the whiteness.
Apparently.
This is perhaps nitpicking.
Yeah.
That's an intentional capitalization of W in white there.
Oh, yeah, she absolutely is. Yeah, you're right. That's a good point.
I think she's trying to highlight something.
Oh, yeah, that's
dog whistle.
It's a very sharp pickup there. Lucky, nice one. I'm not used to that kind of analysis of tweets because they're usually so crap. But that's well done. Yes, I thought some of the criticisms were interesting, like Franklin Graham, the
Billy Graham's son.
Yeah, the pastor. He tried to take the high ground.
Right.
He said this year they're having Bad Bunny perform. This is before. The NFL leadership is pushing this sexualized agenda. Thank you, TP USA and Erica Kirk, for providing an alternative. That was the All-American halftime show he was referring to, with the agenda of celebrating family, faith, and freedom. Like, so he wasn't being racist or anything. He was saying, oh, they're just very sexualized Bad Bunny. Right?
Although many of you will know that was far from the most sexualized Super Bowl halftime show we've ever seen.
Yes, we all recall, well, not we all of us who are old will recall Janet Jackson and Justin Timberlake at the very least.
Yeah.
Just around the Iraq period. It was Iraq was the second biggest war.
It all just blurs together. The Iraq War, Nipplegate, Hurricane Katrina.
The thing I found funny about Franklin Graham is you go, okay, if you want one person to fight for family, faith, and freedom,
yes,
Kid Rock, that's who you want. Like, I mean, a lot of people. I'm not the only one who noticed this. He's got some pretty interesting lyrics in the past, like "Cool Daddy Cool," young ladies, I like them underage. See, some say that's statutory. I say it's mandatory. And this is Kid Rock from Woodstock 99.
You want me to get political? Well, this is about as deep as Kid Rock thinks. Monica Lewinsky is a fucking hoe, and Bill Clinton is a goddamn pimp. Now, a little message to all my motherfucking beautiful people in the house. The early morning stone pimp, I'm gonna break it down and let you know what I think it's all about. Next time somebody comes up to you, they want to argue, fight, scream, and shout, just look the motherfucker dead in the eyes and simply tell them,
"You want my balls in your mouth."
And then he began to sing his song, "Balls in My Mouth." That's the defender of family, faith, and freedom.
Look, for those of you who are too young to remember the late 90s and you're wondering what it was like, it was basically just that.
Pretty much. Mike Johnson had a nice take. Let's listen to Mike Johnson's take.
Any reaction to Bad Bunny being chosen as the Super Bowl halftime performance?
I didn't even know who Bad Bunny was,
okay.
But it sounds like a terrible decision, in my view, from what I'm hearing. What's that?
How come?
Well, it sounds like he's not someone who appeals to a broader audience. And I think, there's so many eyes on the Super Bowl, a lot of young, impressionable children. And I think, in my view, you would have Lee Greenwood or role models doing that, not somebody like this.
So the problem is, Bad Bunny, the guy who's been streamed more than any other artist for 4 of the last 6 years. Last year he was streamed 19.8 billion times. His problem is he doesn't appeal to a broad enough audience. By contrast, who you want, who really appeals to a broad audience, is Lee Greenwood.
Yes.
Who had one hit in 1984, is 83 years old, and hasn't performed at a non-Republican function in about 2 decades. That's who you want for a really broad audience.
That hit, by the way, was Proud to be an American, which had a post 9/11 resurgence.
It did. Can you imagine if he performed for 25 minutes? He'd just have to sing that song like 6 times. Mike Johnson would love it. Anyway, obviously had a bunch of idiots saying he wasn't American, which obviously he is, and obviously plenty of other Super Bowl performers have not been. Rihanna, for instance.
Yeah.
The main issue for people, obviously, was him not speaking English.
Right.
There's a lot of people talking about that.
Yes. As bad as Kid Rock obviously is, you need to have lived in Michigan to understand quite how bad he is.
Yes.
I mean, this is a state that loves its white rappers.
Yeah.
Like, it loves
Eminem's.
Loves Eminem,
Michigan.
loves Insane Clown Posse,
Yeah.
both from the Detroit suburbs.
Yeah.
Kid Rock is just so far below that, and always has been. But he is also the one who tries actively to kind of milk the Michiganness of it the most. Like, he is the biggest panderer in the world of white rappers. And that is saying something. So I was living there when one of my votes for the worst song of all time came out, which was his kind of reworking of Sweet Home Alabama.
Oh, yeah. All summer long.
Yeah, except he was also name-dropping Michigan. He was talking about being at a camp in northern Michigan where all these kids were singing all summer long.
Yeah. And they rhymed things with things.
Yes, yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's sort of like this avatar of this weird and sad subculture that exists in Michigan of people who've never even been below the Mason-Dixon line flying Confederate flags. I also went to a brewery once somewhere in southeast Michigan.
Chances are Kid Rock was there.
Well, he wasn't, but there was this uniquely awful beer there called Kid Rock's Badass American Lager.
Oh, yeah.
Now, Michigan is like one of the homes of craft brewing in the United States. Like, a lot of it started on the West Coast, but Michigan was really getting it going in,
Got a lot
in
of
the
Germans
Midwest.
there. That makes sense.
You do not have to go very far in Michigan to find this like outstanding craft beer.
Yeah.
And they're just in the middle of this, there's this just tap of Kid Rock's mediocrity.
On the people not speaking English, I just want to finish this point.
Yeah.
Which is that, like, yes, people got upset about that, and some people were racist, whatever. Yeah. But I actually think people kind of missed the boat on this one. And there's a semi-serious point I have to add to this, which is I understand why culture warriors would be bothered by that, but what it actually primarily says about you, which is a complete description of most of the people saying that, is that they're old.
Yeah.
Because no one could have listened to pop music anytime after 2017 and not being used to hearing a foreign language.
Yes.
Like, basically, as soon as K-pop went on the American charts and the Australian charts, English charts and stuff, we started just getting Korean songs all the time.
Yes.
Like, so they do some English songs as well, obviously. Mm-hmm. But there's plenty of, Blackpink did heaps of songs in Korean. Like, it's something you get used to. And last year in particular, I can tell you, because I've been listening to a lot of last year, oh my God, there was so much Spanish-speaking music.
Yes.
So much. I mean, well, they're talking not just Bad Bunny, but Rosalia was one of the biggest albums of the year. Selena Gomez did a whole bunch of Spanish-spoken stuff.
Yep.
Karol G had heaps of hits. Spanish, she's from Colombia. Aitana, Spanish as well. It just goes on and on. In fact, there was this Japanese band that's becoming relatively big outside Japan, Mrs. Green Apple. where not only do they just do it all in Japanese, but they write all the song names in characters, so you can't even pronounce them. Right? It's just if you listen to music now, you'll be so used. Like if you watch MTV, there is at least, or whatever channel it is on Foxtel these days. There's at least 2 songs an hour. That's in a foreign language, that's something that doesn't bother young people, but really bothers old people, and I think that's the reason why. So I just throw that in just as a semi-serious point.
Yes,
Dave, I know you like your trivia. Mm-hmm. On that note, I want you to name the 5 top Spanish-speaking countries in the world by total speakers.
By total speakers.
Yeah. So from the most spoken Spanish to the least. Top 5.
My guess would be Mexico's number 1.
Yeah, Mexico's a clear number 1. That's 138 million people. They all speak Spanish.
Yeah. Number 2, I'm guessing, would either be Colombia or Spain.
It's America.
Oh, okay.
65
I should have known that there was the trick coming here. Colombia and Spain in the...
Yeah, they're the next 2.
Okay.
Colombia's 53 million. So America was 65 million.
Yep.
Colombia was 53 million.
Yep.
Spain, 49 million.
Right.
And then the 5th, I'll just tell you, is Argentina. Yeah, 47 million. So I thought that was an interesting bit of trivia.
Yes, that's a very interesting piece of trivia, yes.
And the other thing I wanted to say about the Bad Bunny stuff, because I've got nothing to say about the actual game, is I just want to quote Trump. Mm-hmm. The Super Bowl halftime show is absolutely terrible, one of the worst ever. It makes no sense, is an affront to the greatness of America, and doesn't represent our standards of success, creativity, or excellence. Nobody understands a word this guy is saying, and the dancing is disgusting, especially for young children that are watching from throughout the USA and all over the world. This show, in inverted commas, is just a slap in the face, inverted commas, to our country, which is seeing new standards and records every single day, including the best stock market and 401ks in history. There is nothing inspirational about this mess of a halftime show, and watch, it will get great reviews from the fake news media because they haven't got a clue of what is going on in that real world. So, yeah, if Bad Bunny wanted to entertain, he should have sung about how great the stock market is going in America right now, even though it's going at the same rate as every other administration. But let's leave that aside. The reason I read that was because you know what that means.
Yep.
Not even Trump watched Kid Rock.
No.
And the All-American halftime show. He didn't even pretend. Poor old Kid Rock. So, yeah, I mean, because he clearly watched that. That wasn't a generic tweet.
Yeah.
That's a tweet of someone who actually watched it.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Unlike Mike Johnson. Yeah. I thought Mike Johnson actually came up with a pretty good answer for somebody who clearly hadn't seen it.
Yeah.
Was asked to give a reason why.
That was before.
Oh, okay,
to be fair.
Yeah, but clearly had no idea who Bad Bunny was.
Oh, yes, he clearly had no idea.
Yes, and, for coming up with something on the spot.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
Well, Lee Greenwood, I think, is pretty bad on the spot, but sure. Let's set a low bar for Mike. Okay. Got a quick stats nugget for you here, Dave, before we get into more Spanish-speaking countries. Mm-hmm. You can guess which one that's going to be.
Yes.
Some population stats nuggets.
Okay.
China has just announced that births in 2025, they dropped from 9.54 million in 2024 to 7.92 million in 2025.
Yes.
That's about half what was projected in 2016 when they repealed the one-child policy.
Yep.
As projected in 2025 to be 14 million.
Yes.
14.3 million births in 2025. Births have fallen back now in China to the levels from about 1738. When China's population was 150 million.
Yes.
That's not going to be a reverse in a hurry because the number of women aged 20 to 34, where obviously most of the children come from, 85% of the births, that's expected to drop from 105 million in 2025 to 58 million by 2050. Obviously, if you do the maths there, that's baked in.
Yes.
That's not going anywhere. That is just going to happen. So people have been waiting for this demographic bomb in China.
Yep.
It's here.
Yes.
It is now here.
It is.
By contrast, America's trying to create their own demographic bomb. Financial year 2025 saw the slowest population growth in history of America, with the exception of 1 year, which I won't get you to guess, I'll just tell you. COVID year, 2021.
Ah, right, yes.
Yeah. It grew 0.5% last year, or 1.8 million. The previous year grew by 3.3 million. And I want to emphasize, this is July to July, which means there's only half a year of Trump.
Yes.
Which means if this is largely because of immigration, it's going to get worse.
Yep.
So, so for those who are going to jump up and down on China, America is creating it for themselves.
Yes.
And we'll see how that works out.
Yes.
So,
Let's talk about Venezuela.
yes.
Before I talk specifically about Venezuela, I want to mention what I think is one of the best academic articles written last year about explaining Trump's foreign policy. So this was in a very august journal, international organization, regarded as one of the top journals in international relations. It was a relatively short essay, only 14 pages or so. I think it might be available open access, but it's been discussed a lot in places like the New York Times and Politico, and I'm putting this in the homework. So this is by Stacey Goddard from Wesleyan University and Abraham Newman from Georgetown University. And what they were arguing was that when you look at Trump's foreign policy, the people have got the wrong idea when they're saying that it's going back to the great power politics of the 19th century. Because they said that the great power politics of the 19th century was fundamentally being fought out by Westphalian states who had identifiable national interest, and they were advancing that national interest, aligning themselves with others in order to advance it. That kind of great power politics, though, they say this is not what we're seeing in the world now. They say don't go back to the 19th century, go back to the 16th century.
Okay.
So they describe this as neo-royalism. And their argument is this is what comes before the modern state. So this is they described it in one interview as before the Bismarckian state, the state as we understand it now, as this kind of distinctive entity that lives on no matter who the personnel in the state are, that has a bureaucracy and that has a defined sense of national interest. They're saying, no, we're going back to the age of monarchy here. Although it's not literal monarchy in most senses, although it still is in Gulf states, what we are looking at are what they describe as hyper-elite cliques who are mainly interested in their own enrichment and aggrandizement. And they're saying if you look at the Trump administration now, this is what it looks like. It looks like a medieval court in that sense. You've got this quite opaque picture of clearly different competing factions. You have the ruler and his quite international clique of hangers-on who are all enriching themselves from his actions. And what he is most interested in is not only accumulating wealth, but also accumulating symbols of prestige and status. Now, this makes a lot of sense to me in terms of explaining Trump. And it also hits on something that we mentioned before, where his most important advisors are his own family members. That's been something consistent across both of his administrations. So I would recommend this. I put a Politico interview with these two authors in the homework because I think that is definitely freely available, and they really kind of get into the logic of it quite well. I think there are still a lot of things to be fleshed out with this model, particularly in terms of how something like this actually achieves some form of legitimacy in democratic societies. But that can wait. This is a really research agenda setting paper. So I highly recommend it. I think it makes a lot of sense of things. And also before we go on, I just want to observe that now after a year of the Trump administration, I think we're getting some idea of how this court politics works. And I was thinking over the summer of who in the Trump administration are the real policymakers and who are just basically the content creators.
Yes.
Right? Now, there are some incredibly obvious answers to both of those things. Like Russ Vought, he is a policymaker. He is absolutely driving the agenda. Stephen Miller, absolutely a policymaker.
How about Kash Patel?
He is... Stephen Miller is far more influential on defence and homeland security than either of the nominal secretaries of those positions. Okay, this brings us to the content creators. Pete Hegseth, content creator. You can tell he has got absolutely no significant input into defence decisions. He is just there to make videos. Kristi Noem, even more so, just absolute content creator. She really seems to see it as her job to create content. Hegseth at least seems to see it as his moral mission to make sure that nobody's fat anymore in the military. And, of course, Pam Bondi.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just a complete content creator. It is clearly Trump and Stephen Miller who are calling all of the shots with the Justice Department.
Just to remind people of what we said last week with Jared, Chrissy Nome specifically when the shooting, the Preddy shooting blew up in her face.
Yeah.
She specifically said, we never do anything at DHS without it going through Stephen Miller.
Yeah. Now, the interesting question is, where does JD Vance fit into all of this? Because he clearly is the front runner for 2028. I would say at the moment he's far more on the content creation side of it than on the policy making side of it.
All he does is tweet.
Yeah. And you can't really see JD Vance's fingerprints on anything at the moment. You can see Marco Rubio's fingerprints on there. And this to me was one of the big surprises, how much Marco Rubio actually turned out to be this quite independent policy entrepreneur within the Trump administration. I think that he, not just him, Stephen Miller I think has a big role, but Marco Rubio is driving foreign policy, especially towards Latin America, much more than I thought that he ever would. He has actually been able to carve out a space to act according to his own convictions.
I think there is an answer for that.
Yeah.
I think the reason is that the area that Marco Rubio cares about, other people in the Trump administration don't have a clue or any interest in at all.
Yeah.
Like they don't care about foreign policy generally.
No.
Like Stephen Miller cares about immigration.
Yes.
But if it's not specifically about immigration, then Stephen Miller doesn't give a toss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, because as we have mentioned a lot before, in 2019, Trump was completely turned off the whole idea of ever wanting to have anything to do with the Venezuelan opposition. That was when John Bolton persuaded him to back a coup, which failed miserably. Trump does not like to be seen as associated with losers. That was the beginning of the end for his relationship with John Bolton. So, I mean, there are many remarkable things about the second Trump administration, obviously, but this coming back to this action in Venezuela and the fact that you have all of this language about regime change around it, that really is, I think, an extraordinary turnaround for Trump. The embrace of both let's do something in Venezuela and let's talk a lot about regime change. That is a really extraordinary turnaround. And I think that it's Marco Rubio's entrepreneurship that has made that happen.
I think that's true. I also would say that I think he was probably emboldened, to use a word people like in American politics, emboldened by the inverted commas success of his Iran push.
It absolutely was. Yeah. And we'll come back to that because then Venezuela re-emboldened him. So, it's just this cycle of emboldenment.
Yes.
We will come back to Iran later on. Okay, so back to Venezuela now. So when we were last talking about this on PEP, because you didn't talk about this last week.
No, we didn't.
We were talking about the murderous boat strikes that were taking place in the Caribbean and what was going to follow from this. And we were talking about regime change as one of the one of the possibilities.
We definitely flagged it as a possibility.
Yes. Even though we flagged it as a possibility, I was pretty surprised when this actually happened. As I think most people were, apart from somebody who apparently bet on it and made quite a bit of money on a futures market a few hours before it happened.
You can bet on anything.
Yes, yeah. But I was quite surprised when this operation actually happened. So it was one of these operations that demonstrates sort of some of the real strengths of the United States military at the moment in terms of this ability to do these very pinpoint raids where I think they killed about 60 or 70 people, but there were no American lives lost.
3 hours in total.
Yeah, in the operation.
And apparently they used well, we don't know this for a fact.
Yeah.
But increasingly it's looking like they used a new weapon as well.
Right. Yeah.
Which is part of the success.
Yeah. So it's kind of got shades of the 2011 killing of Osama bin Laden, same kind of precision, no loss of American lives, just, kind of very clean mission. To say that I'm not saying this was a good thing at all.
No.
I think it was an appalling violation of the national sovereignty of another country that did kill 70 or so Venezuelans.
It's obviously illegal. I mean, look
Obviously illegal.
Rand Paul, when speaking to Marco Rubio in a hearing
Yep.
a little bit afterwards, asked the obvious question, I think, and a good question to ask,
Yes.
which was, if someone did that to us,
Yes.
wouldn't we see that as an act of war?
You would see it as an act of war.
And Marco Rubio danced all around it, as you're about to say.
So I would ask you, if a foreign country bombed our air defense missiles, captured and removed our president, and blockaded our country, would that be considered an act of war?
I will acknowledge you've been very consistent on all these points the entire career. So let me. No matter who's in charge. So I will point to two things. The first is it's hard for us to conceive that an operation that lasted about 4.5 hours and was a law enforcement operation to capture someone we don't recognize as a head of state, indicted in the United States, wanted with a $50 million bounty.
My question would be, if it only took 4 hours to take our president, it's very short, nobody dies on the other side, nobody dies on our side, it's perfect. Would it be an act of war?
We just don't believe that this operation comes anywhere close to the constitutional definition of war.
But would it be an act?
It was a good point, I thought.
Yes.
From Rand Paul, and good try, Marco Rubio, to get around it. But it's just, you're right. It was not good.
Yeah. Now, in terms of what led up to this, because we only found out later on what had been going on in the lead up. It's apparently American negotiators were just trying to persuade Maduro to leave off his own accord. I can't remember where they were suggesting he should go. Sorry, my brain is a little bit foggy after a long illness over the summer. I can't remember where it was that they wanted him to go, but they were trying to get him to leave off his own accord. Maduro basically called their bluff. So he was producing videos mocking the Trump administration, including doing the Trump dance. He was definitely following taco logic. It turned out Trump was not bluffing in this case. And obviously this operation must have been prepared months and months and months in advance. And it turns out that all of the boat strikes in the Caribbean and everything were the softening up period for where they were just getting all of this stuff in place to do it. Now, I think that Trump was very much hoping that this display of force would convince other countries to roll over as well with really minimal use of American aggression. Has not played out that way so far. One of the things that was being talked about was Cuba. And we were talking last year about how Cuba might be the ultimate target in all of this, because given that the US has been trying to enact regime change in Cuba for about 70 years now, given Marco Rubio's obviously personal connection with Cuba. By the way, his parents did not flee Fidel Castro. They weren't expropriated by Fidel Castro. They actually came to the United States before the Cuban Revolution happened, although he has whined a lot about how then they couldn't go back as they had planned. But anyway, he's obviously got a very strong connection to Cuba. Part of Trump's base in Florida are Cuban emigres who are very, very big on regime change. And there was some talk about how because of Cuba's dependence on Venezuelan oil, that this would, this could bring about the death rattle of the Cuban regime. Their economy's in a terrible state, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There were reports a couple of weeks ago that the Trump administration was trying to find people in the Cuban regime who would be, prepared to flee prepared to work with the United States in some way. So far, it doesn't look like that has eventuated. And people are saying Cuba will be a much tougher nut to crack than Venezuela.
Well, they're trying to crack that nut by applying gradually more and more pressure.
Yes.
And he's still got another 3 years to do that.
Yes.
So I wouldn't necessarily jump to conclusions there. Basically, as far as I can see, they've cut off all oil supplies to Cuba now.
Yep.
You can't last without oil forever.
Yes, yeah.
3 years is a long time without oil.
Yes.
So we'll see.
So, I think Trump did suggest they might just fall over in the next 12 months. I don't think that's going to happen. But, as we've said before about authoritarian regimes, you never actually know when they keep such tight control of information. you never actually know how weak or strong they are, a point that we will come back to with Iran. Okay, but coming back to Venezuela, you can't really call what then happened regime change.
No.
So Nicolas Maduro was spirited out of the country. He and his wife, they're now in a jail in Brooklyn awaiting trial on the indictments that were made in 2020.
Applying for prisoner of war status.
Applying for prisoner of war status.
Which I think legally, I reckon they're on pretty solid ground, but I'll talk about that another time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then, and I mean, this was as surprising as everything else. Trump showed absolutely no interest in actual regime change. And he especially didn't show any interest in Machado becoming president. So this is one of the interesting little subplots that was going on here. Corrine Machado won the Nobel Peace Prize last year. Apparently she was nominated for it by Marco Rubio, right?
I believe so, yes.
Yes, yeah. So she's a conservative opposition figure, someone who's very well liked within the Trump administration. She clearly wants to have a role in the new Venezuela, right? I think that was one of the reasons why she gave her Nobel Peace Prize to Trump.
I reckon it's a pretty big reason.
Yes. But Trump, first of all, said she doesn't have the respect to leave the country. Now, I mean, this is just really interesting because in the past, this had always been seen in terms of the United States backing the Venezuelan opposition. Maybe Trump still is pissed off about 2019 when the Venezuelan opposition proved to be completely ineffective and he's decided, nope, don't want to go down that road again. Instead, what he was talking about almost from the moment that Maduro was put on that plane is, we're going to get so much oil. So Venezuela has the world's largest proven oil reserves. They are very underexploited compared to places like, say, Saudi Arabia. That is partly because of the corruption and incompetence of the Venezuelan government. There was also this moment in 2007 where Hugo Chavez nationalized, I think, all of the country's oil. Now, that's not to be confused with the moment in 1976 when the Venezuelan government also nationalized oil, but that was more like a partial nationalization. And prior to that, it had been almost completely in the hands of the United States. And you'd still hear Stephen Miller complaining about, there's Americans who built the Venezuelan oil industry, we need to get it back. Yeah, 2007.
It's a great impression, by the way.
Yeah, 2007 was a much more comprehensive nationalisation. Now, for those of you who can remember 2007, oil prices were at their absolute peak maybe they're not their absolute peak, but it was a boom of oil in 2007. That was a time where a government could just comfortably say, yep, it's all our oil now. All of you foreign oil companies can just go away. We don't need you anymore. Not the case now when oil prices are stubbornly low. Yes. Venezuela's oil industry is something of a basket case at the moment, despite its massive proven oil reserves. And Trump has really just been trying in very heavy ways to re-encourage American investment in Venezuela's oil. Yeah.
Unfortunately, as we've said a number of times,
yes,
Trump keeps on trying to will situations where oil companies do what he wants.
Yes.
But oil companies do what will make them a profit.
Exactly.
And when the price is low,
yes,
which it is at the moment,
yes,
there is absolutely no reason to drill for more oil, especially in a volatile country. We have no idea who's going to be in charge in 5 years' time or 10 years' time.
In a basket case where they would have to, they'd have to build a lot of infrastructure from scratch. These are oil companies that are currently unwilling to drill in new areas in the United States that Trump has opened up because the price is so low. So Trump has always talked about lowering the oil price as a major goal because that lowers the overall cost of fuel, which brings inflation down. The oil price is incredibly low, and what it means is at the moment, oil companies don't want to do anything new. This is one of the reasons why you actually haven't had the kind of extractive industries boom in the first year of the second Trump administration that you had in the first 2 years of the first Trump administration. First 2 years of the first Trump administration, he was opening up all kinds of new possibilities for extractive industries, and they absolutely jumped on it, including oil. Not happening in the second term because the prices are so low.
Yeah.
But oil is what he's very fixated on. He quickly even gave up trying to pretend that this was a law enforcement mission. Rubio and Miller and others are still running that line. But no, he was like, this is great. We're going to get so much more oil. Isn't that great, gang?
Yes.
Yeah, we've done a military operation in the country to get oil.
We're going to be using oil and we're going to be taking oil.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure no one can ever remember a time when, having a war on the basis of trying to secure oil supplies went wrong for the United States.
Yeah. Well, according to Trump, where it went wrong was that they didn't take
Not
the oil.
taking the oil.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, not putting it all in a big briefcase and taking it out of the country.
With the lack of regime change,
Yes.
obviously they've just done a deal with
Yeah.
the vice deputy prime minister,
Delcy Rodriguez.
Delcy, yeah.
Yep.
And it's just so. I mean, I don't know what's official, what's not,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it seems really, really obvious they did a deal with her before they went in.
Yes.
So she knew it was coming.
Yes.
And that she basically said, "You want your oil? You can have your oil." In which case, it makes perfect sense that Trump would not want to rock the boat at all.
Yes.
All he wants is oil. He's going to have his oil.
Yes.
Whereas Machado, if she wants to actually remake the country as a democracy,
Yes.
the people could choose anything.
Yes.
You don't want to take that risk.
No.
You'd much prefer to have a dictator in there who says, "No, you're getting the oil."
Yes.
Yeah, so that works out just fine for Trump,
Well-
which is actually something I also talked about last year when we were talking about potential regime
Yeah, yeah.
change. That that what Trump wants is not necessarily what the Venezuelan people would want, and we know who's going to win that particular contest.
Yes.
And that's what's happening.
We'll come back to Machado in just a second. Let's talk about Delcy Rodriguez.
Yeah, go for it.
So she actually has a record of having undertaken some economic reform. Some.
Yeah. Okay. No, you
Probably,
finish
probably
this
as
and
much
then
as
I'll say that.
because this was basically her portfolio when she was vice president from 2018 onwards.
All I'm saying is I don't have this
Yeah.
prepared because this is your section.
Yeah.
But my understanding is she was at the right place at the right time.
Yes, absolutely.
Like when she was
Yeah.
she was in that portfolio.
Yes.
There was the black market was so large in Venezuela that
Yes.
it was effectively a free market. There were
Yes.
free market reforms, whether they wanted it or not.
Yeah.
because the black market was just taking over.
Yeah.
And so they can say in hindsight, yeah, well, we were liberalizing the economy. No, you weren't.
Yeah.
You were just standing there while the people were liberalizing the economy through the black market.
Yeah, I saw one description. It was, she oversaw a shift from corrupt socialism to equally corrupt capitalism.
Yes.
Yeah. There was an interesting article in the Guardian suggesting that she wants to be the Deng Xiaoping of Venezuela. So after this long period of turmoil and violence, she wants to be the one who opens the country up. These, liberalizing economic and cultural reforms.
Could just remember as well one other one of her jobs in Venezuela was to run the secret police.
Yes,
as
it
well.
was.
So it's opening up the country.
Yes, yeah. Well, what we saw with Deng Xiaoping were, yes, there was economic liberalization. There was a kind of cultural liberalization as well, but there were real limits on the political liberalization. And in fact, political liberalization went significantly backwards after Tiananmen. So, yeah, absolutely no guarantee that you're going to get political liberalization at all, which is what brings us back to poor old Machado, who clearly imagined that she was going to have a bigger role in all of this. Here's an article from Politico today, where an unnamed White House advisor, speaking on the condition of anonymity,
Of course.
is having a go at Maria Corina Machado. Saying, all Maria Corina Machado does is try to negate all of this. She's selfish, the advisor said. None of this is Operation Maria Corina Machado. It's Operation US National Security, which is not tied to her in any way. She's a spoiler and she's working against national security goals.
So selfish the way she's not considering U.S. security.
So selfish. I mean, you could say it's her country or something, but not yet. The person accused Machado, who won the Nobel Peace Prize last year for her work leading the opposition to the now deposed Nicolas Maduro, of undermining the president's policy success, such as the release of political prisoners in Venezuela, joint law enforcement operations between the two countries and other items, by trying to make herself the sole star of the Venezuelan opposition. Yeah, so they're not very happy with her at the moment. That was partly because she had the temerity to suggest, hey, maybe there could be elections within a year.
So selfish.
So
self-obsessed.
So selfish. Now, I mean, like Marco Rubio's response to this in Congress was, well, if you have elections, they're just going to be completely corrupt because the opposition won't have enough access to media, the government will just be able to control the polls, everything.
You can't deny that. So the solution is no election.
Exactly. Exactly. Like, yeah, you could argue, well, the opposition's got a bit of momentum at the moment. Maybe, yeah, but no, they're clearly just not fans of the Venezuelan opposition. By the way,
be much better for the opposition if you don't have elections.
Yeah. By the way, I'm not any kind of booster of Maria Corina Machado, but I'm just saying I think she has been a little bit hard done by people who were acting until very recently like they were her allies, even to the point of nominating her for a Nobel Peace Prize.
That's fair. Just before you go on, I just found, just in my mess of notes, which I haven't organised at all, one stat to back up what I was saying before about the economy, so I might as well just throw it in here.
Yes.
By 2019, over half of all transactions in Venezuela were in US dollars.
Yes.
That's how big the black market was.
That's right. And and she was credited with dollarizing the economy. Like, once again, no, not really. The economy kind of dollarized itself.
Yeah, anyway, so go on.
Yes. So now this brings us to something that even Marco Rubio described as unconventional, which is the idea that, okay, so how is the US going to get Venezuela to bow to its will? Because, occasionally Delcy Rodriguez suggests, no, we're not going to take orders from the US.
That's been her whole thing. Her whole thing has been, no, we're independent. Who cares about the US? Well, she's clearly dealing with the US.
Yeah, okay. So here's how it's going to work. Venezuelan oil remains very heavily sanctioned. That hasn't changed. What is going to happen, though, is that revenue from heavily sanctioned Venezuelan oil will be allowed to go to this fund run by Qatar. And every month, I think, the idea is that the Venezuelan government submits a budget to the United States. And then the United States allows the release of this embargoed money in order to pay for things like energy infrastructure and health infrastructure, things that Venezuelans really need at the moment. And Rubio was gloating about how, they're going to be buying all this from the United States. Now, you might think this is incredibly odd, routing it through good old Qatar in this way. This can't just be because they gave Trump a plane. Qatar is, it's developed this reputation as basically it's this mediator between enemy powers. But why do this in this case? Why not just, have the money controlled by the US? The reason is because there are a lot of Americans who want to sue for that money. Because of the fact that American property was expropriated by the Venezuelan government. Because Venezuela's got a lot of creditors in the United States, they don't want that money anywhere near the United States for fear that that these creditors are going to sue the United States government for the money. So that's why it's in the hands of Qatar.
Okay.
And Marco Rubio described it as unconventional. Democrats in the congressional hearing described it as impossible and not allowed. Anyway, we'll see how that works.
One of the things that they're doing with oil, which I thought was interesting, I don't know what else I think other than interesting, is they're kind of using it as funny money for their foreign policy as well.
Yes.
Like, for instance, they've been trying to get India and China to stop buying Russian oil.
Yeah.
to starve Russia in the Ukrainian war.
Yes.
And they just did that Indian trade deal, which we may or may not speak about at some point in time, a few weeks back. And it seemed that they didn't make a big deal out of it, but it seemed from the way Trump was talking that one of their unofficial aspects of the deal is, hey, India, you can get the cheap oil from Venezuela now.
Ah, right.
You don't need to get it from Russia anymore.
Yes.
And so rather than America buying the Venezuela oil, they'll just use it.
Yeah.
As a foreign policy chip,
Yeah.
and if they pull that off, then that might be very useful.
Yes.
But it's just part once again of it's one more example of just using other countries as your playthings.
Yes.
And not allowing them to choose their own destiny.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what does all this mean for the international system? Well, it is a complete blow to the idea of the sanctity of national sovereignty.
Yes.
Now, admittedly, the whole issue of national sovereignty has always been treated very hypocritically, especially by major powers. One of my favourite realist international relations books is Stephen Krasner's book from 1999, Sovereignty, Organised Hypocrisy, where he says, despite all of the lip service the countries pay to sovereignty, there have always been violations of it when it has suited the major powers. So maybe that's just another example of that. But I think the brazenness with which this has been done, the way that this hasn't even really been a consideration for the United States government, the way they frame this as it's within our rights to just do this law enforcement operation. It's within our rights to just seize this oil. This is a major normative shift away from the concept of national sovereignty.
Oh, yeah.
And that is basically very bad news for anybody who is not a major power, and potentially very bad news for those of us, those who are major powers as well, in terms of this, this loss of this norm. I think that this is absolutely atrocious. Obviously, the concerns and the well-being of ordinary Venezuelans are a very long way from the concerns of the Trump administration at the moment, which seem to be purely focused on redeveloping the oil industry for American benefit. The way that other countries are going to look at this is it confirms the kind of purest hypocrisy of the United States. They're not going to see this as this is a uniquely Trump thing. They're just going to see this as Trump has just taken off the mask. And this is just this just confirms the utter hypocrisy that all of us have lived with for so long.
Well, I mean, if you look at the polling, this is America.
Yeah.
Pew polling from Venezuela.
Yep.
39% approved the action. 40% disapproved. It was 50-50.
Yeah.
For just a blatant power grab.
Yeah.
Like there's no way you could justify it. It was clearly illegal.
Yeah.
39-40.
Yeah.
So that it's reasonable to say, well, that's America.
Yes.
America is going to do that.
Yes. Now, we should acknowledge there are a lot of Venezuelans who are very happy that Maduro has gone. There were celebrations both in Venezuela and a lot of celebrations in the United States. This was not a very beloved leader.
No.
This was a leader who, without really any of the kind of charisma that Chavez had, just completely ran the country into the ground. But it doesn't look like the US is preparing the groundwork for anything better. And, I get the idea that the US doesn't want to have anything to do with nation building anymore. That was disastrous when it tried it. But now it basically just wants to run Venezuela as an imperial vassal.
Yeah.
People do not like being imperial vassals.
No, they don't.
People don't like living in a world where apparently this is going to become a normal thing.
Well, let me quote the New York Times when speaking to Trump, when interviewing Trump soon after that. Asked if there were any limits on his global powers, Trump said, yeah, there is one thing. My own morality, my own mind. It's the only thing that can stop me. I don't need international law. I'm not looking to hurt people. When pressed whether he needed to abide by international law, Mr. Trump said, I do. But he made clear he would be the arbiter when such constraints applied to the United States. It depends what your definition of international law is, he said. So that's a comfort, isn't it?
Yeah. Look, no, there are limits on Trump's power, and that is, as we've been talking about, even very powerful countries, there are hard limits on what they can actually do. Like, yes, the United States was able to extract Maduro in this very impressive way. Trump knows they wouldn't be able to bring about military regime change in Venezuela. They would fail in the same way that they've failed everywhere else. They've tried it. There are actually limits. I was talking a few weeks ago to a News Corp journalist because of something that Stephen Miller said to Jake Tapper. The iron law of history is that power rules the world.
The impression gets better and better.
Yeah, so he was, whether he knew it or not, he was basically quoting Thucydides. Thucydides, the Melian dialogue. So this is what takes place between the Athenians and the Melians, where the Athenians say, you've got to give way or we're going to execute all of you. And the Melians are like, that doesn't sound very just. And the Athenians say, like, this is what justice is. Sorry, they weren't all speaking with Stephen Miller.
They're all Stephen Millerites.
Yeah, the famous thing is the strong do what they can and the weak suffer what they must. And that's kind of become this lazy catchphrase of realism. The actual international relations school of realist thought is a lot deeper and more subtle and richer than that. At least some parts of it are. But people often do pick up this idea that, all that actually counts is power. They often don't look at what happens next in the Peloponnesian War, which is that the Athenians, emboldened by their easy conquest of Milos, then go off on a military mission to Syracuse, and they lose very badly. They really underestimate how difficult it is. It's going to be to take Syracuse, and the Athenians end up losing their democracy as a result. Thucydides was not talking about the iron laws of history as if they're somehow universal. Thucydides was a historian who really valued deep understanding of historical context. And he was suggesting that democracies like Athens really have these big blind spots around their own power and their own morality. And as powerful and as righteous as they think they are, they can't predict what kind of obstacles they are going to run into in a world of uncertainty. That is the real message of the Peloponnesian War, not that there's some kind of iron law of power that rules the entirety of human history.
So the big takeaway from the Venezuela story is don't mess with Sicilians, eh?
That's right.
Eh? That's right.
Yes.
That's right. I think we've probably done enough Venezuela.
I think we have.
We will continue with Iran a little later on.
Yep.
But now it's time for me.
Okay.
And I'm going to use this period to flesh out a little bit more on ICE and legality, which I teased last week. I don't know if I'm going to get through it all because I'm just going to keep my eye on that clock. But I'm going to get through more of it, that's for sure. Last week, we discussed how ICE is on the nose, Dave. And I shared some polling showing that Trump immigration is becoming a weakness for Trump, but it's not his policies that are the weakness. It's the execution that is the weakness.
Yes.
As in ICE.
Yes.
ICE is the weakness. I was very pleased to see that because I've been predicting that for about 6 months. And
you have been.
This week there was a demonstration of this that was even clearer than the polling, Dave. I'm about to show you moments before an AEW wrestling bout.
Okay.
All right. Just before you see it, I'll just give you the context because I want to be fair here. I could just play and go, oh, look at that. But I want to give you the full context. The big guy with the tattoos that you're about to see has worn an Abolish ICE shirt in the wrestling ring before. Okay. So that's kind of his thing.
Yes.
He's donated $58,000 with his mate to families affected by the recent ICE raids in Minnesota. His fans know that.
Okay.
He has sung a song with his band, he's a musician as well, about beating up fascists. Okay?
Right.
So he has a certain vibe, this dude.
Okay.
Right?
What's his name?
I don't know his name. Okay. I must admit. I can look it up. Whatever the context, the important thing is directly before a wrestling match, the entire crowd appears to be engaging in a fuck ICE chant. Let's have a look.
A match that the champion wants absolutely no part of. Now the face in the eyes of the champion.
The look on that guy's face was pretty special. And Lockie, just said that the guy with the tattoos, his name is Brody King.
Right.
So it was kind of a tribute to Brody, really, all that. But still,
Yes.
that is a cultural moment, nevertheless,
yes.
if I've ever heard one. Now, at the same time as that is happening, Tom Homan is spearheading the new regime in immigration enforcement.
Yep.
Bovino's gone, Homan's back, and Homan's not any less aggressive than Bovino was in his desire to deport.
Yes.
He's just less confrontational and stupid about it. He's been working with Minnesota leaders to create agreements where he has basically had criminal immigrants handed to him on a platter, which is a lot easier than roaming through the streets trying to arrest random people. And he's reducing the number of roaming around the streets type enforcement actions. He's reduced DHS's presence from just under 3,000 to just over 2,000. And he's hinting very heavily there'll be more reductions in the not too distant future. He's basically taking a bit of heat out of the issue. Okay, so that's the background.
Yes.
So does that mean then that all this ICE issue might be subsiding? It might not be such a big issue in, say, a month's time. No, it doesn't mean that at all. The entire system is in chaos right now.
Yep.
And it has no place to go but worse. So let me explain. First of all, the good news, and there is some. The Supreme Court, while we're away, issued a temporary injunction that the National Guard cannot be used by the Trump administration for law enforcement purposes. Okay, that's not going to be happening.
Yep.
Obviously, it doesn't stop him using the Insurrection Act somewhere down the track when he wants to, but all the National Guard shenanigans, that's over. Okay, and that's welcome. That's good news. Now, the bad news is everything else. All right, first of all, let's start with warrants. Recently, there was a secret ICE memo revealed by one of the newspapers that immigration officers are now considered lawfully able to enter private homes without a judicial warrant as long as they have an administrative warrant. Inverted commas, administrative warrant. Now, to be clear, administrative warrant, inverted commas, that's a Mickey Mouse scrap of paper signed by a rando. Okay? It doesn't mean very much legally at all. A real warrant is signed by a judge after hearing the reasons you have to believe you have probable cause to move into that particular residence. This is just a bureaucrat. Okay?
Yes.
And the kind of bureaucrats that are going to sign these are not very demanding. The reasoning for this is incredible. The General Counsel of DHS says that the reason for these administrative warrants being able to be used in private homes is because, quote, illegal aliens aren't entitled to the same Fourth Amendment protections as US citizens. Now, just to be clear, he's made that up.
That is completely made up.
Completely made up. The Supreme Court has never come close to suggesting that. The Fourth Amendment uses the word people.
Yes.
Not citizens.
Yes.
Okay? Last I checked, illegal immigrants are people.
Yes.
Right? Protecting your home is also, the Supreme Court has held many times, the most important application of the Fourth Amendment as well. Quote from the Supreme Court, the physical entry of the home is the chief evil against which the wording of the Fourth Amendment is directed.
That's right.
So this is a massive constitutional violation that's just been asserted by DHS. And the Supreme Court is not going to let them get away with it. I promise you on that. But the way this goes, for the next 6 months or whatever until that court case happens, they're just going to keep on illegally raiding people's houses over and over again. Try and stop us is their vibe until the Supreme Court stops them. And by the way, all the new recruits, and there are so many new recruits, they are more than doubling the number of ICE officers. They're tripling, maybe quadrupling the number of ICE officers. All the new recruits are being trained with that memo.
Yes.
That's what they think the law is.
And they won't have much time for anything else because their training lasts 8 weeks.
Yes, 47 days.
Yeah. If you're wondering how's this recruitment drive worked, $150,000 signing bonuses.
Yep.
8 weeks of training.
Yeah. So, well, I remember it's 47 days. And you know how I remember it's 47 days?
How do you remember?
That's Trump's little gift to us. Trump 47.
Oh.
47 days of training. I'm sure that's not intentional, but that's just how it's worked out.
Right. Yeah. So if there's some reason why you can't be a real cop, Too many DUIs.
Can't be anything.
You're Dean Cain.
Can't work at McDonald's. It doesn't matter. Just go and join ICE.
Yeah.
Yes. It gets worse. It gets worse. Last week, ICE agents, the week before I wrote this last week, 2 weeks ago, ICE agents were told they don't even need an administrative warrant to arrest people anymore. Not even the Mickey Mouse scrap of paper. They don't need that anymore. They were told they could now carry out sweeps rounding up people that they suspect are undocumented immigrants.
Yep.
All in good faith, Your Honour, without a warrant. If they believe those people are likely to escape before an arrest warrant can be obtained. Now, at this point, I need to explain the federal law to you.
Yep.
Because that is not far from the actual law. Agents are indeed allowed to conduct a warrantless raid, a warrantless arrest, if two conditions are satisfied. This is the law. One, if the officer has both a reason to believe a person is violating an immigration law or regulation, and two, that person is likely to escape before a warrant can be obtained. That is the law.
Yep.
Okay? Without both findings, the officer lacks probable cause to make a lawful arrest, but with those findings, they can. So that means if agents have reason to believe you're an illegal immigrant and they believe you're a flight risk and unlikely to comply with future immigration obligations, they can quickly arrest you before you get away. That is not an unreasonable position, I think. That's what the law is. But here's the rub. The DOJ has redefined the term likely to escape.
Right.
Doesn't mean flight risk anymore. What it means is if the agents believe someone is unlikely to remain at the scene.
Right.
So unless they don't have legs or they're one of those statue buskers you see, and they may walk to some other location, maybe a foot away or 2 meters away or whatever, you can arrest them now without a warrant.
Wow.
And then you can sort the paperwork afterwards saying why you thought they might not remain in that exact location, which should not be hard for you to come up with. So now they can do this to anyone.
Yeah.
Anyone. And by the way, remember the reasonable suspicion you need that they're an illegal alien who's also been downgraded heavily by Justice Kavanaugh last year to now be they got an accent, they speak Spanish, and they've got a Latino kind of a job. That's their reasonable suspicion now, thanks to Justice Kavanaugh. So all across the board, the standards are rock bottom in terms of warrantless arrests on the street. That's not just a recipe for racial profiling, Dave. That's a recipe for harassing everyone.
Yep.
Not just illegal aliens.
Yeah.
Citizens.
Anyone.
Are you carrying your passport with you?
Yeah.
No. Well, I have reason to believe that you might be an illegal alien.
Yeah.
Because you look kind of Latino.
Yeah.
Do you have legs? No. Yes, I can arrest you right now. Come with me. That's how it can work.
Yeah.
It's not good. And this was, by the way, all after the supposed de-escalation from the last few weeks with Homan, the new kind Homan regime. This is all underneath that.
You once described as having awake apnea.
That's right.
That's all I can think about every time I see him.
Man, can you imagine how hard it must be for him to sleep? He can't breathe, but when he's sitting there talking. Anyway, meanwhile, the habeas corpus situation is completely out of control. Remember how last year the Supreme Court held that lower courts couldn't issue nationwide injunctions against ICE. That was the birthright citizenship case, right?
The zone of lawlessness, as Ketanji Brown Jackson described it.
That's the one.
Yep.
Everyone had to petition the court from now on an individual level to assert their legal rights.
Yes.
Why don't we check in how that's going? Firstly, the Trump administration has blatantly misinterpreted the law to decide that anyone who is in the country unlawfully should be subject to mandatory detention. I'll talk about the law about that in a second. But take it from me, it's not true. It's not even close.
No.
If you've been around for 20 years, if you've got a job, if you've got a family, if you're not threatened in any way, shape or form, you're not supposed to be in detention while they sort your case. But the Trump administration has interpreted the law as saying, no, everyone who's an illegal immigrant at all, doesn't matter how long you've been there, you should be in detention. And they are detaining thousands of people that they shouldn't be detaining. knowing full well that every one of those people has to launch their own lawsuit to get free.
Yeah.
Maybe they have the money for a lawyer. Maybe they don't. Maybe they just don't. Maybe the facility they're in makes it hard for you to get a lawyer. Those thousands of people have gone and gotten a lawyer to challenge their detention on an individual basis with a habeas corpus petition. Politico in January identified 360 judges in 3,000 separate cases across the country that have now found people were illegally being detained. Every one of those was an individual case. 3,000 cases they've found so far of people being illegally detained that each of those people had to individually go to court for. That compares to 27 judges who agreed with the administration's interpretation. 360 judges to 27 judges. And I'm guessing I know who appointed those 27 judges. But they just keep on doing this, Dave. Stop them. Who's going to stop them? In Minnesota, as of a week ago, there were 713 habeas petitions in the previous 30 days. This is what's going on in Minnesota right now under both Bovino and Homan. And what this is doing is choking up the court system in states like Minnesota, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Illinois, and California. The states where they have lots of illegal immigrants or they've had one of these raids recently. But it gets worse again. Since these are all one-off cases, and there are so many, thousands of these cases, ICE has simply just stopped complying with the result.
Yeah.
Court says you can't hold on to them, and ICE goes, okay, we're going to hold on to them. Do you want to appeal? Yeah, what are you going to do about it, mate? I'll see you in 3 months in court because the courts are choked up. It's so hard to track all these people because there's person after person after person. Now, to be fair, that could be intentional or it could be that they are completely dysfunctional because they are short on lawyers at the moment as well because all the lawyers are quitting. Yeah. Because it's so lawless.
Yes.
This is what happens when you're in the zone of lawlessness, which we're right in the middle of it.
Yep.
I don't think it's all. I mean, I'm being generous when I say some of it might be accidental. It might all be intentional for all. I suspect there's a mix of intentionality and dysfunction. There's sort of a Kafkaesque situation happening here. But the point is they've stopped complying with a bunch of court orders. So, for example, in a recent case, the chief judge of Minnesota's Federal District Court, Patrick Schlitz, who was a George W. Bush appointee, by the way, he had a full-on tantrum. When ICE didn't release the guy he ordered them to release, he put together a list of 96 court orders in 74 cases that ICE had not complied with just in the month of January. 1 month, 96 court orders ignored. He said, this list should give pause to anyone, no matter his or her political beliefs, who cares about the rule of law. ICE has likely violated more court orders in January 2026 than some federal agencies have violated in their entire existence. And that list was just about those who already had refugee status. There was another bunch of non-compliance orders involving people pursuing asylum claims. Yeah. So it's bad.
It's very bad.
And none of that, I've just told you, is even considering the lying directly to court as well, which is chronic. Just Security found that immigration-related matters were at stake in 24 of 42 instances in which judges found that officials under the Trump administration had misled the courts. So, just to be clear, I'm not saying they've lied to the courts 42 times. I'm saying they've been found guilty by a judge of lying to the courts 42 times. Most administrations will be lucky to have 1 or 2 times when that happens. 42 bloody times in 1 year, Dave. That they explicitly, not said something wrong to the court, intentionally misled the court. It's so lawless. And anyway, this is crippling the courts. There was one example last week when an ICE employee who was filling in for all the Minnesota DOJ employees who had quit. I think there were 32 Minnesota DOJ employees to begin with. Now 14 have quit. There's 18.
Yes,
She's had a breakdown in court. Did you see this?
No, I didn't see that.
It was one of those situations where the judge is going, why aren't you complying with my order? I'm about to hold you in contempt. And she was just like, Judge, I'm trying. I'm really trying, and no one's listening to me. 490 immigrants are challenging their detention in Minnesota from December the 1st to January 26 compared to 375 cases in the previous 8 years combined. Okay, and this woman, Julie Lee, was handed 88 cases of that in a month. One person, 88 cases, right? And she was trying to explain why compliance wasn't happening. I'm going to quote her. I'm here just trying to make sure that this is what she's saying to the judge. I'm here just trying to make sure the agency understands how important it is to comply with all the court orders, which they have not done in the past or currently. I'm here as a bridge and a liaison between the one that's in jail, because if I walk out, sometimes I wish you'd just hold me in contempt, Your Honour, so that I can have a full 24 hours of sleep. I work days and night just because people are still in there. And yes, procedure in place right now sucks. I'm trying to fix it. And as you can see, the email I sent you, it's been improving, a great improvement. And last night I had to stay up until 2:35 a.m. just to get this document ready for you. I can't say it's a waste of time, but I could have sent so many more emails and gotten so many more people get ready to be released. And I'm here with you, Your Honour. What do you want me to do? The system sucks. This job sucks. And I'm trying every breath that I have so that I can get you what you need. That was what she said in court.
Wow.
She was relieved of her duty after that. So now someone else has 88 more cases to take, this is how it's working.
Yeah.
Okay, so don't necessarily blame. That's why I said some of this might not be intentional.
Yeah.
It is just, they've just screwed up the entire legal system.
Yes.
And it's just gotten more dysfunctional.
Yeah.
Again, on Friday night, this is fresh, the US Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit sided with the administration 2-1 that their interpretation of the detention rules I told you before was correct. What circuit was it? The Fifth Circuit. Of course it was the Fifth Circuit. They're the crazy circuit. They decided, this panel, 2-1, that they can just detain, the government can just detain all illegal immigrants all the time, even if they've been in the country for 10 years, haven't committed a crime, and have a family and a job. No bond hearing required. The two judges, by the way, who decided this were Judge Edith Jones and Judge Carl Duncan, who I'm sure you've probably heard of before.
From you?
Yes.
Can't say I've heard them from the lips of anybody else.
No, that's fair enough. Let's just say they got form. Okay,
yes.
All right, they're notorious. The case, if you want to look it up, it's Buen Rostro Mendez. I'll tell you their logic now. Remember I said before I'd tell you the logic. There are two relevant provisions in the law here, Dave. Section 1226 allows immigrants apprehended inside the US to be released from detention while their immigration cases are proceeding after paying a bond.
Yep.
That's 1226. 1225 has no provision for release for those apprehended on the border. It says that in the case of an alien who is an applicant for admission, if the examining immigration officer determines an alien seeking admission is not clearly and beyond a doubt entitled to be admitted, the alien shall be detained pending an immigration proceeding. But it's specifically about illegal immigrants captured on the border. For the last 30 years, that's been interpreted as meaning new immigrants.
Yes.
But the Fifth Circuit panel just held that an alien seeking admission could be interpreted as anyone who hasn't yet received admission. So all illegal immigrants, always. What about Section 1226, the one that said that...
Yeah.
No, they're just ignoring it. Just ignore it. Pretend it doesn't happen. Pretend it's not there. They're ignoring 1226 and saying all illegal immigrants under 1225 can be perpetually detained. So that is where they're at. Right? Now, this is just the Fifth Circuit, and not just the Fifth Circuit. This is just two judges on the Fifth Circuit. Yeah. If the whole panel of the Fifth Circuit heard it, they probably wouldn't agree with this.
Yeah.
The question is, are they going to hear it? Is the Supreme Court going to hear it? Well, look, it's going to get appealed.
Yeah.
But when it gets appealed is the issue. Because either the Fifth Circuit or the Supreme Court can wait a year if they want to. They've done it before. And to be clear as well, this outcome was 100% arranged by the Trump administration.
Yes.
Out of the literally thousands of habeas corpus cases I described to you before they lost, they haven't appealed almost any of them. They've just focused on appealing cases in the Fifth Circuit because they wanted those judges to hear the appeals. They engineered this, right? Which, if you recall, when we talked about the birthright citizenship case last year, it was exactly what Elena Kagan saw coming.
Yep.
She said, basically word for word, that if district courts couldn't impose national injunctions, the federal government wouldn't appeal losses unless they thought they'd win the appeal.
Yes.
They'd just swallow the loss on an individual basis and not change their conduct at all for anyone else. They just keep on doing whatever they're doing, even though they'd lost the case for that individual. That's exactly what they did. She's been totally vindicated. Now, I should say, in the birthright citizenship case, she hasn't been vindicated because the courts have worked around it with national class actions. That doesn't happen with detention cases because in another Supreme Court case from last year, they've done some fine work recently in the Supreme Court. Do you remember the El Salvador ruling at the beginning of last year, right? There was a case, JGG, where the court ruled that the only way someone could challenge their detention was with an individual habeas corpus petition in the state, in the district that they have been physically held. That's the only way they can challenge their detention. Okay? Hence these endless court cases now. So, let me bring this around for you. I've done a lot of different legal things and put them all together. We now have a situation where almost every judge in the country is telling the government you are detaining all these people illegally, but the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals is saying, no, it's fine, you can detain them all you want. And the only way to challenge your detention is with a habeas corpus petition in the district which you are confined. Can you see what's about to happen, Dave? So now the Supreme Court and the Fifth Circuit have combined to create a situation where as long as the administration gets you to Texas or Louisiana before you have a chance to file a habeas corpus petition, you are screwed. So, of course, they're now going to do everything they can to delay you access to legal representation and ferry you at 2 a.m. to Texas as soon as they possibly can. And then you're stuffed, regardless of what the law says. And this will continue until the Supreme Court overrules the Fifth Circuit, which could take a year if they wanted to. And you know what? I'm predicting they do. So that's why this is so infuriating from Pam Bondi, tweeting out, "Tonight, our Justice Department attorneys secured yet another crucial legal victory in support of the President's immigration agenda. The Fifth Circuit just held illegal aliens can rightfully be detained without bond, a significant blow against activist judges who have been undermining our efforts to make America safe again at every turn. We'll continue vindicating President Trump's law and order agenda in courtrooms across the country." So it's the people challenging your obvious illegal detentions are the activist judges, apparently. Not the judges you conspired with to make the law moot for 12 months. Great. Now, you might be wondering, how's the government going to make all this happen without any DOJ employees? Because they're all quitting. The administration is trying to replace resigning US attorney staff with Judge Advocate General attorneys, JAG attorneys. Which is fine because they're doing nothing with Pete Hegseth, I can tell you that. He doesn't care what they think, so they might as well use them for something. Last month, Hegseth directed the military to identify a pool of 40 JAG officers, 25 of whom he said would become special assistant US attorneys in Minneapolis to deal with them quitting. And on Thursday, the Justice Department swore in 33 new immigration judges, many of them temporary installments with military backgrounds to replace sacked and quitting immigration judges. Presumably, they're hoping that the military JAGs will be a little less demanding of legal process as well. I say that because there's one immigration judge who's about to become famous, I feel. Sharon Ashworth, at least famous in the legal community.
Okay, you heard the name here first.
You definitely heard it here first.
I assume you heard it here first.
Yeah, Sharon Ashworth, who is notably harsher than all the other immigration judges. She's in Louisiana, she's a former ICE prosecutor. She was appointed an immigration judge in 2020. Between 2020 and 2025, Ashworth has rejected 85% of asylum claims. The average national rejection rate is 58%. In 2025, though, she's really ramped it up under Trump. In 2025, she denied 95% of asylum cases. So the administration then promoted her to become acting assistant chief immigration judge in Louisiana. Guess where all these people are about to get sent? Right? And you're going, well, she's just one person. They are giving every case to her at the moment. They're just transferring every single case to Sharon Ashworth, which is why I said she's about to become a legal celebrity. Just this week, one lawyer in Kansas City noticed that all his Somali clients and all the lawyers he knew who also had Somali clients all had all of their Somali clients on the same day transferred to Sharon Ashworth, even though they're in Kansas City and she's in Louisiana. They just obviously decide, okay, all the Somalians, they're going.
Yeah.
So we're sending them to Sharon Ashworth. It'll just take a couple of weeks for her to rubber stamp them going, and then they'll go. So it's clearly a deliberate move.
Yeah.
And it's insight into the way this administration is about to put its thumb even harder on the scales than it already was. Okay, so that's the legal situation.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't even begun the thug factor. The thug factor has been turned up as well. I will come back to that, I think, because I want to make sure, just looking at the clock again.
Yep.
All right, we'll do a little bit of immigration every week, guys. Oh, by the way, there is going to be a bonus PEP early next week. I don't know if it's Monday or Tuesday. It's going to be with Melina. It will be a Zoom PEP. And we're going to cover a lot of topics which we haven't covered today. Like, for instance, Epstein. I know there's a lot of people who are hanging for the Epstein. And we're going to do Epstein with Melina. We're going to do the nationalisation of elections, the Fulton County raid.
Mm-hmm.
With Melina, we're going to do the many corruption stories.
Yes.
Last few weeks in Melina, there's going to be a bunch of them. And we're going to do more immigration. Dave, why don't you tell us about Iran, and then we'll see how we go if I come back to this or go to Don Lemon.
Okay, so coming back to the cycle of emboldenment in US foreign policy. There were massive protests in Iran beginning in late December and continuing into early January. The biggest factor in these protests was severe economic pressure. So there's been basically massive devaluation of the currency.
Yep.
There are also huge problems with water shortages. There's been long-running tension over the fact that there are now a lot of Afghan refugees in Iran, which is adding to all of the pressure on everything. These protests basically began with merchants, with shopkeepers, with commercial actors. And these were reputedly the biggest protests that have been seen since the Iranian Revolution itself that brought down the Shah's regime. And there was a lot of enthusiasm and I would say a lot of hope in the West that this finally could be the protests that brought the regime down. Now, I've seen a lot of these moments over the last 20 years looking at Iran. So there was a lot of enthusiasm in 2009 around protests around election. This would be what would bring the regime down. There was a lot of hope, I think it was in 2021. There were protests. Iran has a long repertoire of protest in its history, even under very repressive regimes. So you do get these protests happening from time to time, and there was a lot of hope that these just seemed to be on a much bigger scale than had been seen before, and the issues that were involved were just so acute. There was a lot of hope that these could be the protests that brought the regime down, but we come back to this problem of when authoritarian regimes control information very tightly, it is very difficult to know how fragile they actually are. It's often very difficult to know how much support they've actually got in the general population or how widespread the opposition is. And it's also often very hard to know whether the elite is actually going to stay together when they're under threat. Because the usual ways that regime change happens, it is when the elite splinters. Sometimes you get instances where the people do just rise up and take power, but it's more normal that before you get to that point, the elite itself, some of them want to make a deal, some of them flee. One part of the elite turns on the other, and so in a place like Iran, where there is particularly little kind of available information about this, it was a very, very uncertain time. Now, clearly, one of the groups that was really hoping that this could bring the regime down was the Trump administration.
Yes.
So the Trump administration was calling for regime change, was calling for the protesters to rise up and take power?
I have the tweet right here.
Yeah, give us the tweet.
Iranian patriots, keep protesting. Take over your institutions. Save the names of the killers and abusers. They will pay a big price. I have cancelled all meetings with Iranian officials until the senseless killing of protesters stops. Help is on its way. MEGA! President Donald J. Trump.
Okay, now the bit that I want you to pay attention to is that bit about save the names of the killers, they will pay a big price. What Trump was doing there was actually echoing things that have been said in Iranian opposition circles, in social media in Iran, and by opposition figures, Iranian opposition figures outside Iran, who were promising retribution. Now, just take a step back and think about what this means for the regime itself. When you've got all of these opposition figures gleefully talking about retribution, for you, is that going to be a cue to, hey, maybe we should just leave our posts
Maybe we should step down.
And go home?
Yes.
No, probably not. No, this was something that raised the stakes, not of inconsequential issues, of the most consequential issues, right? This meant that this was about life and death for the regime. And what turned out to be the case with these protests was that even though these protests were a lot bigger than what had been seen before and a lot more widespread, the elite did not splinter. And while the elite stays together and is prepared to exercise this terribly repressive power, like human rights groups are estimating 6,000 people were killed in the protests. At least 6,000 people. So that is probably bigger than Tiananmen numbers. In both cases, it's a bit hard to get a clear idea of how many people died, but extremely repressive. We've heard reports of the repression that has continued, like going after doctors who were treating people who were wounded. Just this, terrifyingly repressive apparatus. And still, despite the fact that the regime is in many ways relatively weak, economically weakened, the military obviously took a severe hit in the war with Israel and the American raids, still at the moment strong enough to maintain control of the population. And we see now the protests seem to have ended to the extent that you can,
why would the protest end, though? Help is on the way.
Help is on the way.
Didn't the help come?
Yeah, I do want to make the point that I think the Trump administration acted quite irresponsibly.
You reckon?
Here by encouraging not just the people to rise up, but to promise retribution when they had no intention of actually helping in any way. Not that I'm saying they should have helped, but they probably shouldn't have kind of really heavily suggested that they would help.
Especially given that was one of the knocks on Obama during the Arab Spring. Him encouraging, in fact, I think it was Iran, encouraging protesters in Iran. He didn't tweet out help is on the way.
Yeah.
He was less encouraging than that. But apparently conservatives criticise him for encouraging them and leading them on and then leaving them in the lurch.
Yeah. Now, there's a long history of this kind of stuff. The Kurds in Iraq were greatly under the impression that George H.W. Bush was
help was on the way.
Help was on the way. So were the Shias in southern Iraq, and they were very brutally repressed. One of the problems in the second Iraq war was that the United States government was putting a lot of stock in Iraqi opposition figures who in many cases had been nowhere near Iraq for 20 years because they were exiles, they were dissidents. And these figures, it turned out, often didn't necessarily have their pulse.
Fingers on the pulse.
Fingers on the pulse. I was about to say their pulses on the ground. Sorry, brain fog again. Didn't have their fingers on the pulse about what was going on. And also in some cases were just blatantly corrupt and self-aggrandizing. Unfortunately, the world of Iranian opposition is not free of such figures either. Now, the Iranian opposition is a very complicated thing. Lots of different factions. I won't go into that all here. Obviously, one of the most prominent factions is the Shah's son. It is always wise, I think, in these situations just not to accept anybody who is claiming to be the spokesperson of the country from outside the country.
Yes.
But also to stress, this is just a very difficult information environment. You cannot trust anything that the regime says. But you also need to be skeptical of opposition figures, particularly when the stakes are this high. There was an article by 2 Iranian academics in Germany who run a polling operation called, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce this. It's spelled Gamaan. I'll just call it Gaman. And they now, for a number of years, like since the late teens, have been saying we can do polling better than anybody else in Iran. So there are actually major polling outfits that do polling in Iran. Pew does polling in Iran. Gallup does polling in Iran. The Iran Social Survey, which is based in the US but uses an Iranian company called Iran Poll, they do polling in Iran. Gaman has argued that all of these existing polling outfits don't get an accurate perception of Iranian public opinion because people are afraid to, for obvious reasons, to give their true beliefs. So Gaman for years now has been coming out with these polls with results that are really at odds with what other polling companies get in Iran. Not just in terms of how popular or unpopular the regime is, but Gaman polls consistently find that there are far higher numbers of atheists and people who have left Islam in Iran than other polls show, which show an overwhelmingly Islamic population. I've put their article in the homework, so they explain to some extent what their methodology is and why they think it's better. But I've also put in an article which critiques that methodology. Now, the authors of this article are coming at it from their own political point of view, which is they don't like the prospect of American intervention, but they are actually drawing on American polling experts and polling experts who are working in Iran who are making some very important points about what might be going wrong with the Gaman methodology. So because Gaman, the thing is, they conduct internet polls which provide people with safety and anonymity, especially with this VPN called Siphon, which was developed in Canada particularly to get around repressive censorship regimes. This is what they use. So there are about 5 to 11 million people in Iran who use this. Remembering there are 70 million people in Iran. So that's probably going to be a fairly small subset of the overall literate population, which is what you would want. The other thing is that they've found that the repeat rate of people taking these surveys is 26%. That is way, way higher than what you would have with randomly sampling the population, where you'd be unlucky to get any kind of repeats at all. So this actually indicates that it's a relatively small subset of a subset that is taking these polls. About 70% of people who take these polls have a college education, compared to 27% of the overall population of Iran that has a college education.
That seems a very big flaw.
Yeah, it's more urbanized. It's younger. So this is not to say that they're, cooking the results in any way, but the results they're getting are probably not that representative. And also it's voluntary as well. It's not it's a voluntary opt-in. Often the invitations are spread on social media. It's a long way from your traditional random sampling techniques. Yeah. Now, okay, but let's get back to their point about, traditional random sampling techniques, face-to-face interviews, phone interviews. How are you going to get people to tell the truth about that in a country with very, very politically repressive norms? What a couple of very prominent American survey researchers say is this is actually less of a problem than you would think it is. Okay? Think about, why would somebody agree to participate in a survey and then not tell the truth? If someone is afraid of the repressive consequences of giving their honest views about the regime, they're not going to answer the survey in the first place. Yeah. And that's why there have been studies done actually suggesting that this effect of fear is nowhere near as big as you would think it is, because where the fear filter comes in is whether you agree to be surveyed in the first place or not.
Sure.
Now, this also means by the way, that these random samples, they're also getting a biased sample of people who will actually agree to participate in the surveys. And I'm not saying that the big major survey companies are consistently getting it all right, but Gaman is probably making claims that are showing a country that is far more secular. Like they said in this article, the vast majority of Iranians want a secular democracy. They wouldn't vote for they wouldn't vote for the Islamic Republic. I'm sure a lot of Iranians want a secular democracy, but they seem to be giving a fairly skewed perception of it.
Yeah.
Also these guys behind it, they are Iranian opposition figures. Like they're committed to that. One of them, his father spent most of his life in jail because he was a dissident. So but the point is, in the information environment at the moment, you do get this possibility of sort of hope being raised and actually leading to disastrous and tragic consequences. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't advocate for the Iranian opposition. I'm not saying that people shouldn't say, look, there actually is a lot of opposition out there. Those protests showed that there was a lot of opposition out there. But I do think that it is the height of of irresponsibility for the Trump administration to jump on board and give the impression that they're about to bring about regime change when they have no intention of actually doing it.
I think we can agree on that.
Now, maybe, often it's hard to tell what Trump's intentions are. There are some reports that it was basically every Arab state along with Israel that persuaded him not to take military action. This time around, certainly they were lobbying against it. But at the same time, we know that there is this pattern of gun shyness with the Trump administration. And yes, they were able to do one of their, trademark, very limited pinpoint operations, bombing the Iranian nuclear facilities. Similar in some ways to what they did with Maduro. But we also seem to be seeing this pattern that Trump doesn't have an appetite for going any further with that. What he likes to do is to be able to claim victories.
Yes.
So, and Iran's worked this out. Iran knows how to leverage this. Iran says, we will execute 1,000 protesters. Then there's some kind of negotiation that takes place. Say, okay, we're not going to execute those protesters anymore. Trump's like, victory. They've stopped killing the protesters.
Yep.
Now what is going to happen is probably not regime change in Iran either. Instead, we're going back to nuclear negotiations. So this is what's begun indirectly now. The two sides aren't meeting with each other yet, but they are meeting with each other. I'll give you one guess to which country they're going to have these meetings. So we've already mentioned it on the podcast. Can you guess at home?
I'm assuming Qatar.
Yes, of course it's Qatar. Yes. So what is the situation currently with Iran's nuclear program? Well, it certainly got damaged. They now aren't giving any information to the International Atomic Energy Agency about the state of the program. I think it's widely believed that they haven't managed to rebuild it. In fact, they have the facilities that were bombed. They haven't even really tried to. Well, there's disputes about this, but for the most part, they haven't even tried to rebuild it. There is maybe a little bit of rebuilding going on, but the 60% enriched uranium stockpile, that's gone. No one knows. I mean, I'm not saying it was destroyed. It wasn't.
No.
I mean, it's gone. Nobody knows where it is. It's still around somewhere. So what you need to enrich uranium for nuclear weapon levels is 90%. And the experts say there's not much of a difference between 60 and 90%. 60% is basically the last step before 90%. So negotiations would obviously be around stopping Iran from enriching uranium. And that's what they have always been about. So Iran says it's prepared to negotiate over this, over limiting its enrichment of uranium. Trump is talking about we want to stop any enrichment of uranium, and after having a meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu today, and also get rid of ballistic missiles as well. Iran's made it fairly clear that both of those are non-starters.
My understanding is that while they haven't rebuilt their nuclear program, they've rebuilt their ballistic missiles big time.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
So that they're to the point where if they were to get into a war, sometime soon they could do some serious damage with those ballistic missiles.
Yes, because this was one of the big factors back in June or July of last year was that they didn't have the capacity to retaliate with ballistic missiles, whereas they do now. So that's actually significant leverage for them. I don't see them just giving it away straight away. Often when people talk about the negotiating abilities of the Iranians, they just resort to the worst kind of racial stereotypes. Oh, those Persians, they're cunning negotiators. You don't need to resort to those kind of stereotypes. All you need to know is that this particular Iranian regime has been negotiating with the United States for a long time about nuclear issues, and their negotiators are good at it. If you look at who their negotiators are, they're people who have been around for a very long time, and they know how to use whatever little leverage they have. So, completely abolishing nuclear enrichment, they've made that clear that's never going to happen. They regard this as a critical part of Iranian national sovereignty, is the ability to enrich uranium. With the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, they got that enrichment down to less than 4%. Okay, so for civilian purposes, uranium enrichment is like 3 to 5%. So that was, they got it down to that level. I would say that's probably the best that Trump would be able to achieve in negotiations. And I think what the Iranians are counting on is the idea that they can give him this as a victory in order to loosen sanctions. Yeah, he can, he can claim that, he's managed to take uranium enrichment off the table. I don't think he will.
Okay, the problem though is that the Iran deal with Obama happened.
Yeah.
If the Iran deal with Obama hadn't happened, then Trump could just come up with his own version of the Iran deal and he'd be fine.
Yeah.
But they've spent the last 10 years, 15 years vilifying Obama for having this deal, which you just described.
Yes.
And in particular, for not having a ballistic missile component and also a proxies component about limiting them working with Hezbollah and the Houthis and all that kind of stuff. So if Trump just can't, I know that they bend themselves in knots, tie themselves in knots to accommodate him, but it'd just be too blatant.
Yes.
For him just do exactly Obama's deal again. And then we'll go, yeah, bravo, well done. I just don't think you can do that. I think, I might be wrong, but I think if they leave him with no choice but to have only the Obama deal with nothing else, I think he's going to attack him again.
You reckon?
Yep. I'm not saying he's going to attack him in any effective way.
Yeah.
But I just think it was drop a bunch of bombs.
Yeah.
And then go, okay.
Yeah, because he's talking about sending a second aircraft carrier group to...
just around, that's a pretty busy area of the world right now.
Yes,
America's got a lot of their fleet over there.
Yes.
And they're there for a reason.
Yeah.
But I think he was bluffing originally.
Yeah.
But I think that if they look him in the eye and say, no, we are giving you nothing but the Obama deal,
they'll be able to think of some other things, some other symbolic victories to give him.
Yeah, look,
that would be my I'm
not saying that they're going to give him anything good. I'm just saying they're going to give him something.
Yeah, okay. So
they're
they're not going to give him the exact Obama deal.
Yeah, they're going to give him something else. Something that's enough for Trump to point to and go, well, look what they did.
Yeah.
Best deal ever.
Yeah. That I think's what's going to happen, but it won't be the complete abolition of nuclear enrichment. I would guess.
Well, I personally reckon he'd prefer to take the ballistic missiles off the table than that. If he got that, I think he'd be more than happy. But just whatever it is, I'm just saying they're just going to give him something. But we'll see. That's my bet.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, they now, he has revealed himself in some way by not attacking them the first time around. I mean, during the protests. Yeah. So. They know that there are limits to what he's prepared to do militarily.
Well, back then, that was like the beginning of... When was that? It was beginning of December, wasn't it? When was that?
End of December.
End of December, yes.
Beginning of January.
I get all confused because I wasn't reading then.
Yeah.
But at that point in time, he didn't have half his navy stationed in the Persian Gulf. Now he does.
Yeah.
It's so he was never going to attack straight away, I think. Despite help is on the way.
Yeah.
but just, I think we're in a different phase now than we were then. So, and the talks seem to be in the dick around zone at the moment.
Yeah. Well, that's the zone that they're usually in.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, as long as the talks continue, that is helpful to the Iranian regime.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
In many ways, we've got two sides who are far more interested in the appearance of negotiations than in actually striking a deal.
And the other thing is we shouldn't rule out. I mean, look, I'm no foreign policy Brahmin, but we shouldn't rule out the possibility that, I mean, we know what Netanyahu wants.
Yes.
We shouldn't rule out the possibility of Netanyahu starting something.
Yeah.
If he thinks nothing's going to happen.
Can never rule that out.
Yeah, knowing full well that America will defend them.
Yes.
And then, they'll be fine.
Yep.
Which is essentially what happened last time.
Yes, yeah.
Like Netanyahu pushed America into...
That I think is the most likely avenue to military action.
Yeah.
Yes.
You got anything else to add on Iran so far?
Nope.
No, that's fine by me. Okay, I'll tell you what. I'm looking at the clock. We've got 20 minutes.
Yes.
All right? I've got a bit of a CHAS Unleashed afterwards. I've got time for probably 15 minutes.
Yes.
I reckon. So I'm gonna squeeze Don Lemon into afterwards.
Okay.
I think
squeeze that lemon.
That's right. Because I think that is that's one where you probably aren't going to have much to say.
No.
It's pretty legal.
Yes.
Right? But I reckon something where you might have something to say is the sackings at the Washington Post.
Yes.
So why don't we move to that?
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
First of all right, so we know that Jeff Bezos obviously owns the Washington Post.
Yep.
He also owns Amazon. He also owns what's called Blue Origin.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the space company. So he's got a lot of irons in the fire, and the Washington Post is the smallest of those irons by quite some way.
Yep.
It barely qualifies as an atom of iron compared to the other two. And what we heard this week is that last week was that there were 300 layoffs at the Washington Post. About a third of their repertorial staff. They got a little more than 800 journos.
Yep.
And they're sacking 300 of them.
Yes.
We shouldn't forget, by the way, when we talk about this, a lot of people just never even mention this. The 16,000 people who got sacked by Amazon in the same week.
Yep.
No one seems to give a stuff about.
Yep.
They're all worried about the 300 reporters for the Washington Post. And I understand it's not the 300 jobs that people are concerned about. It's the fate of the newspaper that they're concerned about. But still, 16,000 people got sacked by Amazon in the same week.
Yeah.
But let's talk about these cuts. First of all, they appear to have closed the sports department.
Yep.
This is what they say. Closing the book section. Closing their podcast, their signature podcast, Post Reports.
Yep.
I don't know why you do that. It probably costs 5 cents. But anyway. It's anything like our podcast. Why don't we just go to the Washington Post? They need a podcast. Anyway.
Let's get posty.
Look, we've already got the catchphrase. The Metro department, I'm calling departments like it's a department store.
Yeah.
The Metro section is going to be heavily restructured, if it even exists. The style section, I think, is on its way as well. A number of the editors will be significantly reduced. Art teams will be merged. Closing a lot of international desks, although the managers say, quote, we will continue to have a strategic overseas presence in close to a dozen locations with a focus on national security issues. So it's not completely gone, but I know the Australian desk is shutting at the very least. They also said that politics and government will remain the largest desk and will remain central to the paper, along with national news. They would emphasize coverage, they said, of, quote, areas like science, health, medicine, technology, climate and business, advice and health and wellness, investigations and national features, especially with a focus on culture and online and daily life. Sounds like a lot of opinion pieces there.
Yep.
And that
sounds like a lot of stuff where you can get much better information on this from somewhere else.
Yeah. And it's also weird because apparently they've cut down staff from their tech and climate reporting teams. So that's a little clue they mean opinion rather than reporting.
Yes.
All right. And also there's, just as a little side, some bonus scumminess here. Because, we'll get into whether Jeff Bezos is, whether this is fair enough or whatever from Jeff Bezos, but one thing we can all agree on is he's got a lot of money.
Yes.
Right, he's got like $250 billion. Pretty scummy that the international reporters, who they're closing down their desks, have to fund their own way home.
Yeah. That is really bad.
They're in war zones, some of them. Like they literally, some of these international reporters, the Japanese / South Korean reporter has organised a GoFundMe campaign to allow people to get home safely. That's scummy.
How much money did Bezos pour into the Melania movie?
$75 million. Yeah.
He could have brought plane tickets for everyone for that.
I think he could have. Okay, so first of all, before we get into the details, what's your thoughts so far?
This is why you just can't have media outlets being owned by people whose business is not media. I mean, we talked about this last year.
Yeah.
That the number of media outlets in the US that are now owned by corporations who this is just one part of their portfolio, not their biggest part. And if that media interest is going to come into conflict with their broader corporate interest, which the Trump administration has organized at every step that they will, that, if you want a positive regulatory environment, your media outlets must be sufficiently pro-Trump, then they are going to bend the knee. And even though the Washington Post is different in it's not owned by a corporation, it's owned by one very wealthy individual. As you said, he's got irons in every fire and he's making commercial decisions about, this paper is far too much trouble.
Yeah, and they're not irrational decisions.
No.
I mean, he's I actually think people have missed the point a bit. They're focusing on the $100 million losses that Washington Post is suffering.
Yeah.
Jeff Bezos doesn't care about $100 million
No.
losses. That's fine.
Yeah.
Like as Peter Baker said, his net worth has increased $55 billion in the last year.
Yeah.
Don't think he's worried about $100 million losses. But it's what Washington Post is going to cost Amazon.
Yes.
And Blue Origin. Like Blue Origin literally just signed a $2 billion contract with the Space Force. That's Pete Hegseth.
Yes.
Do you reckon Pete Hegseth might care a little bit about what the Washington Post has to say?
Yep.
I reckon he might.
Yes.
Right? So that's a $2 billion contract.
Yeah.
Amazon's web services division, AWS, I don't even know how many billions of dollars it takes in a year from the government, but it's a lot.
Yes.
Right? It's a lot of billions.
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean that's the money they care about. It's not the $100 million loss.
No.
So it's totally rational for them to worry about those billions of dollars. Trump has made it a rational thing to worry about. So it's not like it's a stupid decision, but but you then take your point. You go, well, okay, Dave, you go. They need to be a media baron. Who's the billionaire media baron who's going to buy the Washington Post?
I mean, I don't know if there is one out there. So basically, the models that are out there that are working at the moment is to have some incredibly wealthy trust, like the Guardian has, that is prepared to lose money on it.
Yep.
New York Times is in the hands of one family who media is all they do.
Yep.
Which I've heard Peter Baker say that someone who works at the New York Times, that's a distinctive advantage in terms of job security.
Is the Atlantic a trust? Like I know it's the widow of what's her name, Lauren Powell. I know they got a rich benefactor, but I don't know if she has it in a trust or not.
Right. Yes.
Because he can do that,
yes.
which is a question I have for Jeff Bezos. Why don't you just put the Washington Post in your own trust?
Yeah.
Just chuck $2 billion in there,
yes.
like $1 billion in there, in a trust, and go Trump. Hey, my hands are tied.
Yeah.
I can't do anything to these guys. They have nothing to do with me. What's the situation looking?
Lauren Powell Jobs.
Yeah, Lauren Powell Jobs. That's right. Steve Jobs is widow.
Yeah.
But is she like a sole owner, or is she put in a trust?
Emerson Collective is the investment organization. So I think that's the trust.
Might be trust. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Stop going.
It's really depressing. And I mean, the New York Times already employs something like 8% of all people in the newspaper industry in the United States. This is just going to further consolidate that position of the New York Times. And I'm not knocking the New York Times here. That is a very unhealthy situation that this one newspaper would be employing that many people in a country that big.
Well, the interesting thing about this for me is that This has all happened so fast.
It has happened very...
I've got a graph for you. Have a look at this. This is the share of memorandum traffic between the New York Times and the Washington Post. Wow. You can see that until 2024, they had the same share of online traffic.
Right, yes.
And it's just split basically the moment Jeff Bezos decided to not endorse Trump.
Absolutely.
So to not endorse Kamala Harris.
Yes, yeah.
That's when it split, right?
That
was a bad decision in hindsight. But my point is, leaving that aside, it's just overnight the Washington Post has gone from the size of the New York Times, at least in terms of influence, to just a basket case.
So, I mean, the editorial decisions that he's made are awful. So it was, not only not endorsing Kamala Harris, it was bringing on a bunch of Murdoch hacks to run the opinion section. The editorial board op-eds are some of the most god-awful things you'll read. Like, it's worse than the Wall Street Journal. It's worse than the New York Post. It's just blatant pandering with, in terms of actual Washington Post readers, with no point at all. There was, for a while, there was this pretext of, we need to tell stories that'll appeal to all Americans. Like, all Americans are not Washington Post readers. And what that really just was a pretext for moving the opinion page to the right. Yeah, people don't like it. The Washington Post sports section over its history was a very important institution in itself. Just shuttering that. I mean, it's really just sending a very powerful signal. Don't bother reading this paper anymore. Don't bother buying this paper anymore. There's been a lot made of... the fact that the New York Times, it bought up The Athletic, it bought up the whatever cooking platform.
Wordle.
The games, the game section. And as a fellow victim of the New York Times game section.
Bloody oath, I'm all over it.
Yes, I mean, this is, this is all powerful stuff, and it may.
Do you play Pips? I love Pips.
I do play Pips. We're not advertising though, but so the New York Times made some pretty canny decisions around basically expanding its, its mission of what a newspaper actually was. But I don't think those decisions are as big in magnitude as the bad decisions that Bezos has made.
Well, I remind you, until 12 months ago, they were neck and neck, at least in terms of online influence.
Yeah.
And on this, I mean, this is just beating you over the head with it.
Yeah.
On the same day.
Yeah.
As Bezos made that call, as Washington Post made that call of sacking 300 journalists, the New York Times announced they gained 1.4 million digital-only subscribers in 2025, including 450,000 in the last quarter.
Yeah.
They ended the year with 12.78 million total subscribers, and they're heading towards their stated goal of 15 million by the end of 2027. The digital subscription revenue increased 13.9% year over year, to $381 million in the fourth quarter, and total subscription revenue grew 9.4% to $510 million. The digital advertising revenue rose 24.9% year over year to $147 million. All those announcements are just all at the same time as the Washington Post is just going down the toilet. I kind of, for a moment there, I was thinking to myself, is there room for only one newspaper?
No, there's been room for many newspapers for many years.
Coming from the same angle, like the same. Let's put it this way: if you are someone who is going to pay for a subscription to an online newspaper, are there enough people who are happy to pay for two subscriptions for the kind of person who subscribes to the New York Times to also subscribe to the Washington Post? Because until now, they have been the same people.
Yeah.
The Washington Post and New York Times, right?
Yeah. But it wasn't necessarily that everybody had to subscribe to both of them. I think the Washington Post had quite a strong market of people who didn't subscribe to the New York Times, because the Washington Post, for a long time, I think had significant advantages in things like national security reporting and reporting on government in general.
But they still might.
They also, I don't think they do, not with these moves. They also had a very big footprint in the Washington, D.C. area and in Maryland and Virginia. And until recently, you could read a lot of things in the Washington Post that were oriented around those areas and brought a lot of readers in. Their sports section, like in every newspaper, the sports section is a really important thing for bringing readers in. There are plenty of readers of every newspaper who that's the only thing that they read because they have really in-depth beat reporting about the local teams. Washington Post's sports coverage was really good. So they didn't have to be directly competing with the New York Times on everything. What Bezos has done is actually to really cut down on certain areas where the Washington Post actually had a significant local advantage.
Yeah. Actually, that might answer my next question, which was because I was just thinking about all those different. I mean, part of the problem, I'm going to say this in a second, but part of the problem is we don't know what their plan is.
Yeah.
I'd love Jeff Bezos to just explain what he sees, or someone.
Sell it.
Yeah, to just explain what they're doing.
Yes.
Because there's just a lot of silence at the moment. Which isn't great PR. But if you try and make the case for them, and you look at those things they're cutting, you go, with the exception of the international desk, they're basically cutting, like you just said, all the local stuff.
Yes.
And if Jeff Bezos sees the future of the Washington Post to be a world paper, you can understand the logic.
Yeah.
It might be a mistake, but you can understand at least the strategy of going, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to double down on news and politics and world stuff, and we're going to be one of the world papers, right? We're going to be the American paper to America and the rest of the world. We're going to be the best coverage of Washington politics. And who cares about sport in Washington? Who cares about cooking? Like we're going to double down on that. I could see that argument being made, except for cutting the international desk.
Exactly.
That didn't make sense to me.
That would have required way more investment. In the international desk. Look, I'm sad because the Washington Post used to be a very important source of information for me. It had a lot of the best reporting that was available on American foreign policy, national security, and American politics in general. Those days have just vanished very, very quickly. And like the New York Times is not enough to do it on its own.
If Bezos did get up and he said that's exactly what he's doing, he's trying to make it a world brand or whatever. But do you think that it has a way forward or not?
No, because first of all, they've already lost out to the New York Times on that. Second, if you want to be a world brand, you're not competing with the BBC and Al Jazeera and various other international state-owned news agencies that make a lot of content available. In fact, make all their content available for free online. You're just like Washington Post is never going to be that. New York Times, I think, can compete in that space because it's got its particular kind of boutique thing going on. But in terms of asking, is there room for two papers to do that? No, not to do that. Not to be the American global brand. New York Times can do that because the United States doesn't have a big state-owned news agency. Or broadcast service. It does have them, but they're being shrunk to within an inch of their life. So that's why the New York Times can compete in that space.
I'm also interested to see. I mean, maybe all those 300 reporters are all style reporters and local sports reporters, but I'm interested to see what effect cutting 300 journos has on their political news reporting and their news reporting. Like I suspect it will be compromised.
Yes.
Yeah, even if they're protesting, it won't.
Yeah.
Just a random stat before I move on to the next little bit on this. 136 newspapers in the US have closed in the past year, by the way.
Yeah.
And since 2005, the number of newspapers published in the United States has dropped from 7,325 in 2005 to 4,490 now. And daily newspaper circulation has averaged between 50 and 60 million people 25 years ago. Is now 15 million. So this is a long trend. I was going to say that I think part of the problem is that there is the lack of clarity of plans. I mentioned that before. When Bezos took over in 2013, he seemed to have a clear plan. He was going to bring back the news division. He was going to back the news division and treat the paper like a charity case, essentially.
Yes. Yep.
There's a quote from Bob Woodward, who at the time, who said he asked Bezos why he purchased the paper. And Bezos said, I finally concluded that I could provide financial runway, because I don't think you can keep shrinking the business. You can be profitable and shrinking, and that's a survival strategy, but ultimately leads to irrelevance at best.
Yep.
And at worst, it leads to extinction, which is interesting looking back on that now. At first, he did swallow the losses. He swallowed almost $100 million in annual losses for a couple of years there. I mean, it's just the start, there were profits. But anyway, then all of a sudden, he wasn't going to leave the paper alone anymore. He made those decisions we just talked about, which obviously didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Then at the beginning of 2025, we heard about his, quote, big, hairy, audacious goal of jumping from 2.5 million subscribers, remember the New York Times was heading to 15, to 200 million subscribers. But they never said what the plan was. They were just going to do that. We heard nothing until these cuts. And we're still hearing nothing. What's his updated vision? He wasn't even at an announcement. We got no idea. And I think that's part of what freaks people out.
Yeah.
Just the absence of any planning or anything. You just go, well, where is this going? Where's this going? It's just going down. That's where this is going. Unless someone can tell us otherwise.
Yeah.
You got any other thoughts on this kind of stuff?
This is too depressing to talk about, and I think I need to go.
Okay. Okay. I'll just, one other question I have just before we get out of here. That was a good ending, but I just why doesn't he sell it?
That's what everyone wants to know.
There are so many people who want to rescue it.
Yes.
Why not let them, even if you think they're wrong? If he's keeping it for prestige, that failed.
Yes.
He's losing prestige now. And as I said, if he doesn't want to be responsible for the decisions, then put in a trust. There are other options. It's just anyway. And then Will Lewis is the milk hacker you referred to before is gone now as well.
Yes.
They say because he was partying. The rumors are because he was partying in San Francisco in Superbowl week.
Yes.
Right, at the time the jobs cuts were announced. Who knows?
Yeah.
I'd probably get rid of him. He hasn't done a great job, has he?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're too depressed to add anything else. I think we've probably dealt with this.
Yep.
Dave, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
We will see you in a week's time. So we're going to have Melina on early next week, and then next Friday we'll have Dave again. And I reckon by the end of your next one, I reckon we'll be caught up.
Okay.
We'll see.
Stay peppy, everyone.
I'll see you next week. I'll see you guys after that white flash for CHAS Unleashed. Until then, stay peppy. Welcome to CHAS Unleashed with Lockie as we continue the thankless task of trying to catch up the 2-month holiday.
Hi, Peppers.
Hi, Peppers. As flagged, I am going to go through the Don Lemon imbroglio. First of all, what happened? If you're going, Don Lemon, what the hell are you talking about? We're talking, this is an offshoot of Minnesota. This happened in Minnesota. In fact, it happened at City's Church in St. Paul, Minnesota. It's a little church where they have 8 pastors. One of them is a guy called David Easterwood. He's the acting director of ICE's St. Paul field office. He's a target of a pending class action lawsuit filed by the ACLU of Minnesota. They're going him for aggressive tactics when working for ICE. I don't think he in particular was particularly aggressive, but he's just part of the institution, so they're all going for him. There were about 30 protesters who turned up to his church, or the church that he's a pastor at. Many of them were from Black Lives Matter, Minnesota. And the idea was this to be a surprise protest that no one knew was coming during one of the church's masses on January 18, before I'd begun reading again. I've done a lot of historical reading about this one. Strangely, wasn't one of the masses where David Eastwood was there. They never bothered to find out when he'd be at the church before they protested. That's a surprise! The guy you're protesting isn't even here. But anyway, they protested this church when some other pastor was there. During a service, I might add. Now, 2 journalists knew that the protest was going to occur and came along to film it. There was a local independent streamer called Georgia Fort. And there was also ex-CNN host Don Lemon, who you can see behind us there. He got sacked from CNN and he's now an independent streamer. At one point in time, he was a journalist for Twitter, but that lasted until he interviewed Elon Musk, and now he's just independent streamer. I gotta say, he's one of my least favorite American journalists. I've never liked the guy. I think he's super partisan and kind of a moron, but that doesn't mean he should be jailed for it. That they're not jailable offences, at last I checked. The protest came in the form of all the protesters quietly attending the mass in the front row, and then on cue they all stood up and started chanting and basically hijacked the mass. The journos filmed them while they did it and then interviewed people. Whole thing only lasted a few minutes because most of the people there just left immediately. They didn't want a bar of it. Here's some of Don Lemon's footage to give you a sense of the protest.
So I don't know if this is what they deem as successful or not. But anyways, I'm not going to get in the middle of it because I'm not here as an activist. I'm here as a journalist. So I don't think they know what to do. I'm sure they probably call the local authorities right now, and they'll show up in a bit. But so far, no one has been hurt. People are just really angry and upset. And members of the church are trying to get them to calm down. But this is the beginning of what's going to happen here. When you violate people's due process, when you pull people off the street, you start dragging them and hurting them and not abiding by the Constitution. When you start doing all of that, people get upset and angry. And if you remember what the civil rights movement was about.
As you can see, Don Lemon, well, he wasn't on camera, but trust me, he was next to the camera. He wasn't an active participant in the protest. He was definitely sympathetic to their cause, though. He just wasn't actually protesting. And this became hugely controversial as a story for a few reasons. One, because Don Lemon was involved. He's a big culture war figure in America. So anytime he's involved, it's a big news story. Two, because the Trump administration got very, very angry and promised repeatedly to arrest everyone. This is Pam Bondi.
If you protested and went into that church on the Sunday and you terrorized the parishioners, we are coming after you. Then they burst in through all doors, including Don Lemon, and started harassing and antagonizing and terrorizing these parishioners. A woman ran out the back door, scared to death, and broke her arm. We are coming after you if you participated in that. I don't care who you are. If you're a failed CNN journalist, you have no right to do that in this country. We don't live in a third world country. We're going to protect our houses of worship in this country.
She shouldn't be doing that, by the way. She shouldn't be prejudging cases, and that's not very neutral sounding from the Attorney General. But whatever, this is what she does. Then it got really
You're so defeated.
Honestly, do you remember my ice bit before?
Yep.
We got bigger things to worry about now.
No, just a while ago we would never have imagined you going, oh, well, that's just what she does.
No, you're absolutely right. You are absolutely right. And I look forward to the day when I can worry about that stuff again.
Yeah. As you were.
Then it got really weird. The US Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Rights Division, Harmeet Dillon, she's basically a Twitter troll. She was a Twitter troll before she got the job, and she's twice as much a Twitter troll now. She just whipped up a massive online frenzy about this for weeks. And I'm not going to just write that off like I wrote off Pam Bondi on Fox a second ago. It was bad. It was really bad and really prejudicial. Like, she couldn't have prejudged the investigation she was conducting more. Like, she was really going them. And as they started arresting people, the White House actually altered the photos of the protesters to make them look like they are crying like a baby. So here's one photo of the leader, Nakima Levy-Armstrong, that Kristi Noem tweeted out of her getting arrested.
All right.
And then they changed it to this. This is tweeted out by the official White House account, by the way. This is what the White House did to the photo. They're making her cry with AI.
I was going to say, that's a pretty dodgy AI job.
Sorry,
dodgy. It's obvious.
Yeah. It is obvious. But also, it's the official White House account. They shouldn't be doing that. And people totally believed it was real.
Really?
Yeah. Totally. Like, look at the comments. They totally believe it was real. I just really couldn't believe it that they would so openly put out an AI-altered image as news, because they gave no indication that it was a joke or anything. Like they sent it out like it was a proper news story, you know? And that became a news story in itself. The most amazing thing was Abigail Jackson, the White House Deputy Secretary, then mocked the people who were noting that the photo was AI. I guess she's got the same view of you as you, that it's just so obviously AI. Why would anyone point that out?
I say that particularly because a lot of what they post online is AI stuff of Trump.
They do.
To the point where they've done all of the groundwork at this point. I mean, I should be more surprised that they're using it to doctor images of people rather than...
Yeah, no, look, that's a fair point. But I'm just going to say that people definitely took it seriously. And then when it got pointed out there was AI, she put up a crude cartoon of a debunker, and like a cartoon, and wrote in a random sort of mixture of caps and small letters to suggest that, she wrote, excuse me, is that digitally altered? It was like that. I was like, come on. I think that was a pretty good impression of what the caps and
that's
small letters looks like.
That's how we communicate sarcasm.
Yes. I still can't believe she tried to own people for pointing out that she was an unreliable source of information. But anyway, bear in mind most courts bar prosecutors from making any remarks at all about legal proceedings in a way that could prejudice the pool of jurors who might ultimately hear the case. And the White House is going all in on the people they just arrested and charged.
Yep.
And went all the way up to Trump, who had to go at them this way.
They're patriots, and they have to be abused by guys like Don Lemon, who's a loser, lightweight. I saw him the way he walked in that church. It was terrible. I have such respect for that pastor. He was so calm. He was so nice. He was just accosted. What they did in that church was horrible.
So that's him having a go at Don Lemon. And a few days later, 7 protesters were arrested, as well as the 2 journalists covering the protest, Don Lemon and Georgia Fort. Once again, DOJ turned it into a sideshow. They could have gotten Don Lemon to turn himself in. His lawyer had already offered for him to turn himself in. But the DOJ turned up to the Grammys so they could arrest him in public at the Grammys because Lemon was covering the Grammys as a journo.
Whoa.
They arrested him there. They've all been released on bail since then. They're waiting their court dates. All right, so let's go through this. Does Lemon have a First Amendment right to do this as a journalist? Because this is what most people have said. Most people have gone, well, he's a journo. He has a First Amendment right to cover stuff as a journo, doesn't he? Freedom of the press? Isn't that how it works? Well, let's start with the protesters themselves. There's little doubt that they are in trouble because they've been prosecuted under Section 241 for a civil rights conspiracy, but in particular, Section 248 of what they call the FACE Act, which is the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act, which is a Clinton-era law that protected abortion clinics, but also protected church services. And it protects places of religious worship from intimidation and interference. The protesters were definitely interfering with the church service, okay? They just were. So they're in trouble, I think. Civil rights conspiracy, by the way, can get you potentially 10 years, though not in this case, it wouldn't. But violating the FACE Act on the first offence gets you probably a year's prison. I think they're probably looking at less than a year. I think they're looking at probation, maybe no prison at all, because it's obviously a rather light offence despite how they've been carrying on. But the fact is the protesters are different to the journalists. They're in a different situation.
You don't suspect they'd want to send a message?
Well, we'll get to that.
Okay.
We'll get to that. Well, they can only send a message if he's guilty, right?
Right. Sure.
They've already tried to send a message by charging him, but then now it's out of their hands.
I meant with the protesters.
Oh, the
if
protesters.
they're so guilty.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
Most people don't care about the protesters anyway. They're focusing on Don Lemon. They're saying, as I said, he's a journalist. You can't. This is the death of free speech. You can't arrest this guy. This is violating the First Amendment. His lawyer, Abby Lau, who seems to be defending everyone who's charged by the Trump administration these days, said, Don has been a journalist for 30 years and his constitutionally protected work in Minneapolis was no different than what he has always done. The First Amendment exists to protect journalists whose role it is to shine light on the truth and hold those in power accountable. There is no more important time for people like Don to be doing this work. Right off the bat, I'll tell you that's not true. It's just not. There is no First Amendment right to interrupt a church service. I'm sorry, there's not. In fact, I'll go further. You have no First Amendment right to break any law for any reason, okay? The First Amendment protects your speech, not your behaviour while you are speaking. If you as a journo want to cover what it's like to murder someone, you can't narrate the experience while you kill them and then claim a First Amendment privilege to not be charged for murder, okay? Your news report about killing someone, that's protected. The actual killing someone bit, that's not protected, right? Action not protected, news report protected from the government, right?
Right.
Not from a private body, from the government. Similarly, journalists can be charged for hacking if they're accused of hacking, right? If they hack someone's computer to find news, the news report is fine. The hacking, you get charged for. Ask Julian Assange. He knows all about it. There's some grey areas out there, sure. In my view, the Don Lemon example is not one of them. You can't protest anywhere you want, anytime you like. No, you can protest in public anytime you want, but not in private. This was not a public area. This was protesters trespassing onto private land. So their protest wasn't First Amendment protected at all. The First Amendment protects you against government suppression of speech. So legally, this is very straightforward. Either Don Lemon broke the FACE Act and violated a private service, or he didn't break the FACE Act. His journalism is not a defense. The fact that he kept saying things like this.
I'm sorry that you guys are so angry.
I'm just chronicling. I'm not with the group.
That showed that he was thinking he was a journalist and he wasn't trying to break any laws. But doesn't mean he was right. Whether he did or not break the law is another question altogether. Don Lemon, there are many things he is not, and one of them is he is not a lawyer. And so I don't trust his judgment of whether he broke the law. By the way, no, if the First Amendment protected Lemon's reporting, it would also protect the protesters protesting. They have a First Amendment right to protest as well. But neither of them have the First Amendment right to trespass and to break the FACE Act. Before we even get to the FACE Act, I should note the protest clearly was illegal for other reasons. Trespass. They're asked to leave by many people at the church, including the pastor. They did not leave.
Yeah. I was going to say that they're allowed to enter the church until they're asked to leave.
Yeah, exactly. So it was an obvious case of trespassing. The definition of trespassing is entering the premises of another and without claim of right, refusing to depart from the premises on demand of the lawful possessor. That's the Minnesota definition of trespass. They did that. It's also disorderly conduct when you disrupt a lawful assembly or meeting and you have reasonable grounds to know that it will or will tend to alarm, anger, or disturb others or provoke an assault or breach of the peace. They did that. But they weren't charged for either of those two breaches, so who cares? All right? So even though they broke both those laws, they weren't charged for either, probably because they're both minor misdemeanors. And they wanted to send a message.
Okay.
So they wanted to get in for something with jail time, right? They were charged under the FACE Act. The FACE Act says you cannot by force or threat of force or by physical obstruction intentionally injure, intimidate, or interfere with any person lawfully exercising or seeking to exercise the First Amendment right of religious freedom at a place of religious worship. So let's look at those terms. Interfere with means to restrict a person's freedom of movement. Can't do that. Intimidate means to place a person in reasonable apprehension of bodily harm to themselves or to others. Can't do that. Physical obstruction means making it unreasonably difficult or hazardous to enter or leave a facility that provides reproductive health services or a place of worship. So entries and exit points.
Yeah.
You can't block them off, right? That's a pretty high bar to reach, what I just read out to you, especially given they have to show that Don Lemon himself breached those terms. Not the group he was with.
Yeah.
He himself had to do it. And he had to do it intentionally. If he accidentally blocked someone when he was thinking about something else, no, not guilty. He needs to go, I am going to block you and not let you get out. If he does that because he wants to be a journalist, too bad. You're breaking the law.
Yeah, but he has to do it intentionally.
Intentionally. If he's thinking to himself, I just want to be a journalist, I just want to talk to that guy, and so he unintentionally blocks him by going up to him to talk to him, that's cool.
Interesting.
You need to intentionally be interfering with them and blocking them, right?
Right.
That's the law. Now, I'm not sure Don Lemon gets even close to that. He's standing to the side of the church at all times during the protest, and then he conducted a few standard interviews. But let's read literally everything the indictment has to say about Don Lemon.
Okay.
Is everything. Overt Act number 15. While inside the church, defendants Armstrong, Allen, Kelly, Lemon, I won't read out all the other names, Lemon, oppressed, threatened, and intimidated the church's congregants and pastors by physically occupying most of the main aisle and rows of chairs near the front of the church, engaging in menacing and threatening behaviour for some chanting and yelling loudly at the pastor and congregants and or physically obstructing them as they attempted to exit and or move about within the church. Let's look at the footage. Let's see if they're right. Here's the footage. What you're looking at here is Don Lemon next to the camera, so you can't see him, fine. But trust me, he's next to the camera all the time. Tell me though, if it looks like where Lemon is standing at the moment, where the camera is, Lemon is oppressing, threatening, or intimidating anyone. He's on the mic, by the way, so he's not talking. You're hearing silence from Don Lemon. And tell me if he's engaging in menacing and threatening behaviour and physically obstructing people. I'd say no. The Washington Post says they found no footage showing Lemon participating in any chants that disrupted the church or obstructing anyone. I don't see Lemon intentionally injuring, intimidating, or interfering with anyone. Let's move on. Overt act number 20. Defendant Lemon told his live stream audience about congregants leaving the church and about a young man who Lemon could see was frightened, scared, and crying. Lemon observed that the congregants' reactions were understandable because the experience was traumatic and uncomfortable, which he said was the purpose. That's not relevant to him at all. That's Lemon describing what other people did.
What the protest was, yeah.
Not what he did. So that's irrelevant. Overt act 21. As the operation continued, Defendant Lemon acknowledged the nature of it by expressing his surprise that the police hadn't yet arrived at the church and admitting to knowing that the whole point of the operation is to disrupt. Disrupting a service is not what's illegal. It's intentionally injuring, intimidating, or interfering with people that's illegal. So that, once again, is not relevant, especially since he was talking about what the protest did, not what he did. He wasn't part of the protest. In fact, throughout the video, Don Lemon makes a point of staying away from the protest and saying that he's staying away because he's a journalist. Look.
So I'm just going to be as respectful as possible. I'm not here to intimidate anybody. I'm just here to chronicle and to get some answers and let people know what they've done. They've pumped the music up really, really loud. Here you heard the pastor. Some folks are praying back there. Do you see the guy with his arms stretched up? And they're praying. But by the way, just so you know, this is what you get with independent journalism that you will not get with corporate media. I'm just here to tell you. So if you're in the chat, if you're with us, support us. Support us. Support us.
So now we get to what I think are one of the two actions specifically of Don Lemon's conduct that may potentially be an area. Overt Act 22. While the takeover operation was underway, Defendant Lemon asked Defendant Armstrong, who's the person we should talk to? Is there a pastor or something? And she pointed to the front of the church, but noted the pastor might have run away. Overt Act 23. With other co-conspirators standing nearby, Defendants Lemon, Richardson Fort approached the pastor and largely surrounded him to his front and both sides, stood in close proximity to the pastor in an attempt to oppress and intimidate him, and physically obstructed his freedom of movement, while Lemon peppered him with questions to promote the operation's message. Overt Act 24. While talking with the pastor, Defendant Lemon stood so close to the pastor that Lemon caused the pastor's right hand to graze Lemon, who then admonished the pastor, "Please don't push me." Overt Act 25. Although the pastor told Defendant Lemon and the others to leave the church, Defendant Lemon and the other defendants ignored the pastor's request and did not immediately leave the church. That's a lot there that Don Lemon supposedly did. Why don't we watch the entire interview with the pastor and decide whether everything I just read out checks out or not? Are you ready to see the intimidation and the interference and the physical obstruction that has just been described? Let's go.
Our church had gathered for worship, which we do every Sunday, and we were interrupted by this group of protesters. We asked them to leave, and they obviously have not left. So.
What do you think of this?
I mean, this is unacceptable. It's shameful. It's shameful to interrupt a public gathering of Christians in worship. So,
but there were folks who will say,
I have to take care of my flock.
Okay, but listen, we live there's a constitution in the First Amendment to freedom of speech and freedom to assemble and protest.
Yeah. We're here to worship. We're here to worship Jesus because that's the hope of these cities. That's the hope of the world is Jesus Christ.
I want to be very respectful. Please don't push me, though.
We're here to worship Jesus. Yes. That's why we're here. Yeah. Okay, that's why we're here. Okay. That's what we're about.
Don't you think Jesus would be understanding
we're about
and love these folks?
We're about spreading the love of Jesus.
But did you try to talk to them as a Christian?
No one is willing to talk.
Okay.
I have to take care of my church and my family, so I ask that you actually would also leave this building.
You don't want us to chronicle what happened?
Unless you're here to worship.
I'm always worship. I'm a Christian.
We're here to worship. Yeah. We're here to worship. Okay.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. So that's one of the pastors of the church.
Okay. Number one, he's staying very close to the pastor because it's loud and he can't hear him.
Mm-hmm.
Like seconds later after this interview, he was saying, I can't hear anyone.
Yeah.
Right, that's the first thing. You can't tell me that pastor didn't feel free to leave. Behind him was totally free. He could have just walked in the other direction if he wanted to. You can't tell me he was intimidated. He didn't look even slightly intimidated. He looked pissed off.
Trump said he was calm.
There you go. He freely left when he has had enough of the interview. He just walked right past them. They didn't stop him. There was no physical obstruction. So they clearly didn't surround him to the point that he couldn't get away if he wanted to. It was a voluntary interview, and he took part in that interview, the pastor, implicitly ratifying Don Lemon's presence there. If he didn't want Don Lemon to be there,
he should have said to leave.
He should have said to leave straight away. He shouldn't have conducted the interview.
Well, he sort of does it at the end, a little.
He did ask Lemon to leave a little. He said, and by the way, Lemon did not leave after that. He stayed for 7 more minutes. What the pastor said was, I asked that you actually would also leave this building unless you're here to worship. And Don Lemon tried to be tricky. He said, I always worship. I'm a Christian. That's a bit evasive. That's the kind of answer we gave on the Chaser all the time when we were trying to create deniability in court. Okay, I've heard that before. So, look, it's arguable whether he was trespassing by staying then or not. Either way, he wasn't charged with trespassing.
Yep, of course, right.
Yep. He was charged under the FACE Act for obstructing, interfering with, and intimidating, none of which he did. So I find that incredibly unconvincing. The second part is interviews outside. Overt Act 28. At one point, Defendant Lemon posted himself at the main door of the church where he confronted some congregants and physically obstructed them as they tried to exit the church building to challenge them with facts, inverted commas, about US immigration policy. Let's look at them. There were 2 interviews. We're not going to watch the whole interviews because they do go for a while, but we'll watch at the beginning so you get a sense of the obstruction and intimidation.
What do you think of this?
Just a harmless Christian here that wants to praise the Lord with my son, and now I got to go home. I'm sorry that you guys are so angry.
I'm just chronicling. I'm not with the group.
What do I have to say?
Can you understand why they're angry?
I don't understand any of this because I'm a simple man. I'm a simple man who loves the Lord and is a good father. So this is what we look forward to, is coming, being with our family and praising Jesus, and that's not something that we have to run away from. So this is kind of a bad day for us. But, we're going to heaven, so that's the best news we got.
Do you understand that some of these folks feel voiceless?
I don't understand, because right now I'm so upset right now. I don't really have I'm thirsty, and I can't think very clearly. So what I want to do is just say, we love you.
Yeah.
My son and I love you guys.
Yeah.
And
I'm a journalist. They're activists.
The simplest thing we can say is that we love you guys.
Did that interview look involuntary? Did that guy look obstructed, interfered with, or intimidated by Don Lemon? He had an entire vista of snow he could have disappeared into if he wanted to. He happily talked to Don Lemon. And let me tell you, if Don Lemon did obstruct, interfere, or intimidate him, it certainly wasn't intentional. He was just interviewing the guy.
Yeah.
Here's the other one.
What do you think of this?
While I agree with everybody's freedom to protest, these people have come into our house and they've interrupted our worship. This is a house of peace, and we try to proclaim that. And this stirs division and rancor. And in the end, it's not helpful. Ultimately, I believe they've lost. They've emptied a house of worship. Everybody's gone home. Their point has been proven worthless. And so, in the end, I think they lose.
What about that guy? Was he intimidated? Was he obstructed? You get the idea. They've got nothing. Nothing at all. That's it. That's the end of the evidence against Don Lemon as far as all the obstruction goes, right? We should note as well, by the way, the FACE Act is awake to the possibility of interfering with peaceful protests. It's got a section that says nothing in this section shall be construed to prohibit any expressive conduct, including peaceful picketing or other peaceful demonstration, protected from legal prohibition by the First Amendment to the Constitution. Now, like I said, First Amendment doesn't protect you in a private establishment, so I don't think it's going to protect the protesters. But it just shows you they were worried about infringing on the First Amendment when they wrote this. Right? It just means there's a high bar to clear to be guilty of this offence. The one other thing which I have to mention is the conspiracy charge. Section 241, which made it a crime to conspire to injure, oppress, threaten or intimidate any person in the free exercise or enjoyment of any right or privilege secured to him by the Constitution or laws of the United States. The only part which could potentially be a conspiracy from the indictment that I can see was a meeting they had beforehand at the shopping mall, including Don Lemon. Overt Act number 4. At the pre-op briefing, Armstrong and Allen advised other co-conspirators, including all the defendants, about the target of their operation, i.e. City's church, and provide instruction on how the operation would be conducted once they arrived at the church. Don Lemon was briefed what was going to happen, and he kept that information to himself. The indictment goes on to say that he repeatedly said on the broadcast before the protest that he would not say what was going on before the protest. Overt Act number 5. On the morning of January 18, defendant Lemon began live streaming on his internet-based show, The Don Lemon Show, where he explained to his audience he was in Minnesota with an organisation that was gearing up for a resistance operation against the federal government's immigration policies, and he took steps to maintain operational secrecy by reminding certain co-conspirators to not disclose the target of the operation and stepped away momentarily so his mic would not accidentally divulge certain portions of the planning session. Overt Act 6. During a discussion with Defendant Armstrong at the pre-op briefing, Defendant Lemon thanked Defendant Armstrong for what she was doing and assured her that he was not saying what's going on, i.e. he was not disclosing this target of the operation. Defendant Armstrong explained that Operation Pull-Up was a clandestine operation in which she and other agitators would show up somewhere that is a key location where the targets don't expect us and we disrupt business as usual. That's what we're about to do right now. And C, Defendant Lemon said he would see her there. Overt Act 7. Before heading to the church to join his co-conspirators, Defendant Lemon advises live stream audience that we're going to head to the operation. Again, we're not going to give any of the information away, i.e. operational details that would disclose where he and co-conspirators were heading. Overt Act 11. While en route to the church, Defendant Richardson told Defendant Lemon that they had to catch up to the others, and Defendant Lemon replied, "Let's go, catch up," and because he was still live streaming, Lemon instructed Richardson and an unidentified male, "Don't give anything away. We can't say too much. We don't want to give it up." Is that enough to suggest he was part of a conspiracy? What do you think?
It sounds like he has access to information. I do not know the definition of conspiracy well enough.
Very well done.
Tell you.
Very well done. You need to know the definition of conspiracy, because being told what's going to happen and not immediately telling the police, I don't think is going to meet the definition I'm about to read out. The language in the legislation is that he entered into an express or implicit agreement to commit the underlying unlawful acts. What underlying unlawful acts are we talking about here?
A conspiracy to trespass.
Exactly. There were no underlying unlawful acts that they are going to successfully charge, because all their FACE Act charges aren't going to stack up. Okay, so there are no underlying unlawful acts. And you also need to show that Don Lemon knew the unlawful purpose of the agreement and joined in it with the intent to further the unlawful purpose.
Yeah, as opposed to
just stumbling around like an idiot, like Don Lemon does. He needs to go, I know exactly why this is unlawful. I mean that to happen. And I'm going to plot with you to make sure that unlawful act occurs. If he's going, I just want to make this protest occur, and I think the protest is lawful, that's not guilty. It need to be intentionally committing an unlawful act. If it's with intent, you need to know it's unlawful. You need to be trying to break the law. You need to be conspiring in that respect. That's going to be hard to prove, given every few minutes on the video he's saying he's a journalist just trying to chronicle the story. So I can't see how they're going to make these charges stick. And it gets worse for the government because there's also an animus defence because DOJ clearly charged these people vindictively and with malice. I say that because they doctored photos of them crying as they were being arrested. That's coming back. That's going to be in court for sure. And they were trolling online to the public with prejudgment about the case. They clearly had animus. And I've even mentioned Georgia Fort, by the way. I've been talking about Don Lemon because everyone else is talking about Don Lemon.
Yeah. Georgia
Fort was the other journalist. She was also there for the interview with the pastor. She didn't get any questions. She just stood there. That was her offence. She didn't interview anyone in the church door. She was down on the side filming the protest as well. The only thing she did, according to the indictment, other than standing next to Don Lemon interviewing the pastor, was overt Act 29. As a minivan full of children was preparing to depart from the church, defendant Kelly walked in front of the minivan and angrily yelled at the occupants, and defendants Armstrong and Fort stood in front of the minivan while Fort interviewed Armstrong. She conducted an interview in front of a minivan. That's what they're charging her with. Pretty weak tea. That's not physical interference, and it's not intimidation and all the rest of it. Her arrest is even more outrageous than Lemon's. Okay, should he have even been charged? A federal magistrate and an appellate court both said no, he shouldn't have been charged when they refused to issue a warrant in the first place. They felt the prosecutors hadn't shown probable cause to arrest Lemon, and I agree with them. Judge Patrick Schlitz said there is no evidence that Lemon engaged in any criminal behaviour or conspired to do so. One judge on the appeals court, though, thought there was probable cause. They were outvoted. The only reason they got to arrest him is they went to a grand jury and convinced them. God knows what they told the grand jury. Also interesting, no attorneys or political appointees put their names on the filing. Suggested that the employees didn't want to be associated with this.
Whoa.
Because they knew it was crap. Now, finally, the right say the left have been hypocritical about this. Okay, so let's leave all the legal stuff aside. Let's now just talk about the politics.
Sure, okay.
He's not going to go to jail. He's definitely winning this case. The right say the left have been hypocritical because they say Steve Baker ended up getting charged for entering the Capitol building on January 6th.
Oh, that's what we're going to.
Yeah, when he was covering the right for the Blaze. They say he was a journalist. It's a conservative journalist. Biased as all hell, much like Don Lemon, actually. But he was there as an independent journalist, they say. He didn't do anything, he didn't commit any other crimes. He just followed the mob in and filmed them. The left weren't talking about the First Amendment then, they say. What do you reckon? Do you reckon they got a point?
What was his name, sorry?
Steve Baker.
What was Baker convicted of or accused of?
Parading. Just entering the Capitol.
Okay. I don't know what he said.
He said lots of inflammatory shit. He's a hack. But no one was arrested for what they said. No one was arrested for saying inflammatory stuff.
Sure. Okay. Well then, at first glance with no further information, I would say, yeah, of course, it's hypocritical. But that's because these two sides hate each other. So,
yeah. I think you put it perfectly. I agree entirely. I also think it's a fair point that there's hypocrisy in the Biden administration prosecuting 26 pro-lifers under the FACE Act in 2022 for actions outside abortion clinics. And the left didn't have a problem with that. But as soon as we're prosecuting people in church services, now we don't give a shit. I understand prosecuting people outside abortion clinics if they're intimidating people, yelling at poor women, trying to who are vulnerable, pushing them around, getting in the way so they can't get inside the door, spitting at them, screaming at them, threatening them. Absolutely, throw the book at them. That's why the FACE Act was written in the first place. But sometimes people were doing nothing but just standing there singing hymns. There were some pretty pathetic hymns as well, I might add. Sometimes there are old ladies, like 85-year-old ladies, doing nothing threatening or intimidating, just standing there being old ladies. And at the same year, the Biden administration filed 0 FACE Act charges against those who vandalised and threatened pro-life pregnancy centres, and there were a lot of them, let me tell you, because that was the year of the Dobbs ruling. So there was a lot of vandalism of the pro-life centres. I think those complaints of hypocrisy are also valid. And in fact, I said that back in 2024 about exactly this situation. I said, I don't like the way the Biden administration was arresting peaceful protesters and just religious people just standing around outside abortion clinics. That wasn't what this law was about. It was an abuse of the law, and it was hypocritical because they weren't going after the other side. I said that. The truth is, I think this law sucks. I think it's borderline unconstitutional the way it's being used. I think it needs to be much tighter and restricted entirely to like real violence. Like they need to strengthen up the wording much more so that we don't have these kinds of situations popping up. The fact is the law exists though. So unless it gets struck down, it needs to be respected. In this case, I'd say respecting the law means dropping these obviously trumped up charges against Don Lemon and Georgia Fort right now, in my view. What do you think?
I just reckon that if you're at the point where you have to accuse the other side of being hypocrites, you've already lost, because it means that you're just using them to excuse what you've already done. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Cool.
Wise words. I didn't let you speak much during that Unleashed. I really was very unleashed. I'm sorry about that, Lockie, but I just had my eyes on the clock and I can see how much editing you got to do again. So I wanted to get this in, so I squeezed it in, squeezed that lemon. That'll do for now. We are going to have a bonus PEP at the beginning of next week with Melina, which we hope you enjoy. Until then, stay peppy.